This video is brought to you by friend of the channel, Squarespace. Stick around to learn more about them, as well as a special offer they're making available through my channel. Lucy, I like your new lighting.
Thank you.
People listening on the RSS can't see it, but it's very gamer-esque.
I know.
It's unmistakably. It's got the Twitch purple. And the, yep, it is. What was the inspiration for this, Lucy? Tell us.
Okay, no. Do you want the boring answer?
We want the most detailed, long, boring answer you can muster. So this is a podcast, okay? Yeah. Every minute is content.
Please
Let's
tell
go.
us.
So the boring answer is my apartment has a lot of windows, and that is incredible. I love having so much natural light. However, it is a nightmare for someone who does video content. Like anyone who watches the video version, any user who watches the video version of this podcast will see my lighting change multiple times based on when the sun goes down. Every single episode. We recorded the Final Fantasy block just now. I was scrubbing through to make sure everything recorded. The beginning, I could have been in a different room. Could have been somewhere else. Anyway, so even with all this setup, I was just like, I'm gonna move stuff around. I actually have put a green screen in front of one of my windows to try and block out the light. I can't hang up curtains. My landlord would,
How dare you upgrade the apartment with useful amenities? Get out.
So I had a little bit of time today, so I just thought I would put some lighting in and make it a bit better.
Now that you have a green screen, are you going to do green screen content? Are you going to be like in the volume? Like...
I want to put myself into like different things. Have you seen Andy Cortez over at Kind of Funny puts himself in like different characters?
Oh, it's so good. Yeah.
He just like green screens his face.
Yeah,
like, maybe that's what I'll do. But no, so thank you for commenting on my lighting.
Does it have the thing where you can just change the colors from your phone or whatever? Can you just like change them right now? Oh,
I'm afraid I'm not that much of a gamer.
That is a bummer.
I know. I do have a little remote, but I can only do my key light.
Sure.
You're better than me. I've just had a perpetually unfinished, undecorated room for like 6 months, if not more. I'm almost there.
What else do you have left to do in your room?
Stuff on the walls. Yeah. My walls are barren, but
I've got a big.
The framing process is long and annoying.
Framing is so expensive.
Yeah, that's why it's long and annoying, because I wait till I get a coupon from Michael's, which is very often, but you have to time it right.
A coupon.
Shout out to Michael's.
I love coupon life, man. That's it. It's fantastic.
I use like, no, I'm the same. There's a place in San Francisco called Cheap Pete's, and I went. And it's the San Francisco institution, and it's a framing shop. And I walked in, I went, how much? I felt like my mother. But anyway, hi everyone. Welcome to another episode of Frames Per Second.
Ah, shit. There she did it.
I actually think
she has a really bad segue coming up later in the episode you got to look out for. Don't worry.
Boy.
She really bombs hard, so look forward to that one.
I love that our relationship is that you guys are usually so supportive, but that one time.
No, we can't forgive a bad segue. We're podcasters, man. Come on now. That's one thing we can't forgive.
It was Jake. You went on that segment. It was so bad that I felt myself just like my shoulders clenched. I regretted it immediately. I probably blushed.
Oh
but
boy.
It's fine.
You did the old triple shrimp.
The triple.
What's that?
You turbo shrimped. You shrimped up even more than you already are.
Yeah, I did a turbo shrimp. Nice. But we've got a packed episode, as always, for you this week. I'm Lucy James, joined by Ralph, aka SkillUp.
Yo.
I was going to say, you're going to wave on this audio.
I'm just going to do the wave and the thing every time. That's it. Just got to tune into the YouTube feed. That's it.
And Jake Baldino.
Hello, hi. I think I want to just mention, I want to use my platform right now because people don't listen to the end. The next episode is going to be delayed a little bit.
Yes,
logistically.
Good call.
For very important reasons
yes.
that you're going to appreciate. We will just say that.
We would
That's all
not
we can say for now.
Do it unless it was for something
big.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's right.
I was gonna
say.
That's right.
Please welcome to the stage. On this podcast, Hideo Kojima, he's back. No. So yeah, good call out. Next episode is going to be a little delayed. It won't be too long to wait.
Yeah.
And we will let you know as soon as we're going to put it up.
Also, sorry about the audio issues of the last episode.
Yeah,
we fixed it.
We fixed
Sorry.
it.
Which one was that? Was that
The audio version was all borked.
Oh yeah, very sorry about that. We did correct that in the end, but I think people who had already downloaded it were still getting the bad version. So yeah, I'm really sorry about that. And we actually, just so you know, in defense of Stuart, our editor, he confirmed that there was actually nothing wrong with the edit timeline. It was just a render issue where the render itself just went nuts and started overlaying stuff. So Stu was blameless in it. We checked it all out. It was just a technical error. So yeah, very sorry about anyone. Very sorry to anyone who got messed around with that. We apologize.
But Stu's innocent. And he did fix it very, very quickly. And it was at it was 9 a.m. on a Saturday, and he was just like, I'm on it, don't worry. So thank you, Stu.
He was very good. Yeah.
We got a packed episode this week, so we're going to be kicking off by having a chat about Final Fantasy VII Rebirth with Gene Park from the Washington Post and Tamoor Hussain from GameSpot. And then you guys spoke to the Pacific Drive team about that.
No, we just spoke to one person, Seth.
Oh, Seth,
the game director.
Yes.
Yep. And that was a fantastic chat. Had so much fun. It was so good to talk to him about
like how the sausage is made stuff. It's good.
Yeah, it was fantastic.
I need to get around to it. Like I enjoyed my time with the demo from earlier in the year, but then multiple 50+ hour video games have been released, and then
soon is Rise of Ronin and Dragon's Dogma, and after that though it does calm down a lot. Like April is really chill, so I'm kind of looking forward to catching up on backlog stuff during that period. But yes, this month, February and into March is insanity. It really is. So yeah, it
is. And we also Dune. So be prepared for us to announce it, Dune. We're going to talk about
Dune a lot at the back end of this podcast. Even though we're not a movie podcast, we are going to become a movie podcast.
Just this once?
Just this once.
I did go to LA to see Dune Awakening, so I can talk a little bit about the
I do want to hear about that.
Oh, I actually definitely want to hear about that.
Yeah, the new trailer was good, so I want to know. Marketing can fool me, so...
But let's kick off then by having a big in-depth chat about Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Don't worry, we don't spoil the ending. We don't spoil.
It's non-spoiler. You're
no spoils. So here you go.
The fly is here. Oh my god! Just wait.
Fucking hell!
He will not leave. He won't leave.
Just kill it.
The door is open. You fuck. Get out.
This bread out there too. It looks nice.
I'm messaging Stu right now to be like, put that in somewhere.
Are you trying not to kill it? Is that your thing?
No, I'm trying to kill it. I will happily kill this fucking fly. It's driving me insane. Get out of my...
This really is a fly episode.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, no kidding.
It is true. Oh, God. I think you can actually see it in the camera as well, because I'm watching my feed and I'm like, you can definitely see a fly circling around me like I'm fucking Charlie Brown or some shit. Do you know what I mean? Like,
actually, no, that's not Charlie Brown. That'd be Pigpen. Pigpen was the
okay,
one.
right. I forget the names, but
Charlie
that's the
Brown
one with the flies. Okay, there we go. Yeah. There we go. All right.
Well, from flies to Final Fantasy.
Terrible.
No,
she failed. She did not pull it off.
Biffed it. I'm sorry. It's been a long day of me trying and failing to beat Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. I was telling the guys just before we started recording, I landed the final blow on the final boss. And then I had to stop because I had a meeting, and I've been in meetings and doing my job for the rest of the day. And now we're here.
Super funny.
I know. It's so
like, it really would piss me off if I just beat a boss after like an 80-hour epic, and then I can't watch the cutscenes until I finish my meetings for the day. Like, that would be so shit.
This is
That's
like
aggravating. The most anticipated like ending like of video games like this year for sure.
I would cancel that meeting like 100%. I'd be like,
it was with you.
I would have cancelled it with me.
All the more reason Tam would understand. Just 100%. Tell him why.
Yep.
You didn't tell us when I came into that meeting, just quietly seething. But anyway, we're here to talk about Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. So you know where I'm at in the game. Tamoor and Gene, you've both finished it, completed it. Tam, you reviewed it for GameSpot. Gene, did you end up reviewing it for Washington Post?
I sure did. Yeah.
Oh yeah, you did. And Ralph, you are.
I am a fool. Because I never 100% games. Ever. It's not how I play games. In fact, I believe that 100% in games generally ruins them. Okay, that's my hot take that I've said many times. Many people disagree. That's fine, whatever. But I decided, for whatever reason, by accident, I think, that I was going to 100% this one. Not in terms of like a platinum trophy or whatever, but just like do everything you can do on a single playthrough. And right now I'm at 75 hours on chapter 10 of 14. So,
Yikes.
yes. But I have done everything you can do. Every single minigame, every Queen's Card battle, every single marker on every map, every single side quest, everything you can do. And yes, it has been an experience. We'll get into that, I'm sure. But that's where I'm at this point.
It's so surprising to hear you say that. It's so
Say
weird.
what?
It's so weird to hear you say that you're like completing it and not like just.
I don't know why I did it. I don't know why I did it. But I'm actually really glad that I did it because it's definitely shown me a lot that I don't think I would have been able to see had I not approached the game this way. But at the same time, it's definitely. Anyway, we'll get into it.
Clearly got way too much
Discussion.
free time.
Yeah, there's a lot to get into.
Yes,
I
there
mean, where do we want to start? I mean, hang on. Let's start with the kind of new direction in terms of like open-ish world. I'm not going to call it open world, but there are definitely these huge open areas, and a lot has been made of the fact that these open areas and the things that you can do within them can take in the Ubisoft formula, towers, and like things popping up on your map. But they made them good. Panel, would you agree?
Ooh, there we go.
Yeah.
I don't know if they're good. I think that they have value in a way that the Ubisoft ones don't. I think what they've done is, I said it in my review, is like the big goal for this game, like the first game was all about like you effectively play as terrorists for want of a better phrase, and the way you kind of make that empathetic and help the audience sympathize is by really digging deep into the characters, and that's what we get Cloud figuring out how to fight for other people instead of himself. You get a lot of time spent with like Midgar's people and that kind of stuff, and by the time you're like halfway through that game, you're like, yeah, I want to fight for these people, and I'm willing to do stuff that on paper is labeled as eco-terrorism. The way now that what they need to do is make you have that same kind of feeling for the entire world. And not the world as in like the entire world, it's like nature, the planet itself. And the way they've done that, I think, is really clever. It's by taking these kind of activities and making them a point of connection to the world around you. And by learning to understand that world, you start to develop the empathy that you would have for characters in Midgar for this world itself. So the activities are narratively important, but also they kind of bump up. Every single one bumps up against another system that makes it worth your while to do. And that's probably why you end up, despite not trying to, 100%ing everything 70 hours in.
That is 100% the case, because I did the first zone and I'm like, I better check this out, because I'm like, it's the thing. That's what the Rebirth's about. It's got the open world stuff, right? And I'm like, hey, that wasn't so bad. I guess I'll do a bit more of that. I was like, hey, I got some cool rewards out of that. That's pretty sick. And that quest is actually a chain. I better do the next one of that. And then little did I know, I'd finished the first zone. And then I was like, well, I better do it for the second one as well. Do you know what I mean?
If they get you on one zone,
they do, zone, man. Then
if they can get there, and they're really good at doing that. If they can get you on one zone, chances are you're going to think seriously about doing it for every other zone.
Totally. Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's so interesting because you're right. Nothing that they do within the open world structure is particularly innovative. In fact, it's straight up derivative. I mean, it's actually, you say it's Ubisoft. I actually think it's Ghost of Tsushima, which is Ubisoft, right?
Yeah.
But I think it's a step further than that in terms of refinement and the way that, I mean, it has obvious touch points. Like you've got an owl that shows up that flies in front of you and leads you to a
That's a
donation
Ghost
to
of
the
Tsushima
Chocobo.
right
100%
there.
Ghost.
Yeah.
Totally right. You know what I mean? And it's got the climbing sections as well, which are also within Ghost of Tsushima. But the overall feel of the open world doesn't feel particularly onerous or demanding. It also does not feel like the focus. It's always highly optional, you know? And I actually have some issues with how optional some of it is versus I feel like some of it should be better signposted to be more essential because some of the side content is so fantastic. Some of the side quests and those proto relic quest chains are so good. Some of them that you're like, no, don't let people skip this. Everyone should see this. You know what I mean? It's that level of good. But then there's other stuff which is like, go and kill some fiends. Oh, you killed all the fiends,
but you didn't kill them in the time limit, so I'm afraid you're gonna have to do it
kill
again.
them again with the thing, and you're like, nah, that kind of sucks. You know what I mean? So, but overall though, the combination of a very seamless and frictionless open world structure combined with a very smartly constructed economy of rewards combined with a brilliant narrative payoff for many of these quests have made this whole experience very pleasant to play through, you know. And I am not someone that does the open world grind thing. I'll dabble, I'll be like, whatever, cool, and then I tap out. But I said I'm like 75 hours in, and you know what, I've done like 5 full zones now. Okay,
do you need intervention?
I'm now at a point where I'm like, I've had enough of that. Okay, but it's taken me a long time to get to the point where I feel that way, and I usually get to that point way faster in every other game. And I know that when I get to that final zone, I will 100% it for completed sake, whatever. But I would have, at any zone that I got to now, I would have picked out the top 3 to 4 activities within each zone and done them again because I know that they would be worth my time. And I think that in aggregate is a really great accomplishment for Final Fantasy to have landed there. Because I remember Final Fantasy 15 open world, man, like fuck off. You know what I mean? That was some shit, right? That was terrible. So for them to have moved this far and accomplished this much with this entry, I think is so good.
Gene, we talked a couple weeks ago at DICE. You'd already finished the game. You kind of mainlined it. Have you gone back to it? How much of the side stuff have you done? Because we're going to talk a lot about the plot and the characters and everything. I just wanted to get this kind of, not out of the way, but there's a lot of side stuff too.
Yeah, so I can't relate to any of your guys' narrative in terms of, you know, pacing and going through this because I sped through the game.
Did you really?
I did mostly 100% the grasslands, which is the first opening area, but just because I was like, okay, I understand that this is going to be the gameplay loop, so let me start to understand what kind of quests are there. So that's why when I started doing like the fiend intels that you talked about, where you have to beat a certain enemy, stagger them the right way, and beat them in a certain amount of times, I was like, you know what, I'm just not going to waste my time with those. If they're on the way, then I'll do them, but I'm not going to go out of my way to do them, right? I did the proto-Reddit quest in the grasslands, and I was like, oh, that was kind of fun and interesting, and the characters that they introduced were cute and everything. And then I thought, okay, maybe I can just ignore those too. And then I went to the second area, and I did the proto-Reddit quest there, and I was like, this is fantastic. I was like, okay, this turns out the proto-Reddit quests are actually basically like the parallel stories. That happen in each of these regions. So you definitely should be doing the proto-Reddit quests. They're very rewarding. I have completed those now completely. That whole quest chain is actually pretty hard to finish. Yeah. So it's definitely end game content.
That one with the gambits and gears, that one, man, I tried to do that properly, like actually properly myself, and I was like, sometimes like the last one, I was so close, it drove me nuts, and I actually spent probably 45 minutes on that one before I was like, fuck it, I'll let Chadley solve the problem. So I did the AI thing, immediately blew it up, and it was just over. And I was like, God damn you, Chadley. By the way, we need to have a proper conversation about Chadley, because
what is it, the chat module?
Chat GPT, you know.
Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is the story of Chadley and the way he bosses around a group of adventurers through the world. That is actually what the setup of this game is.
If they don't pay that off by, in the final part, in a critical moment, Chadley just going, for the last 2 games, I've been collecting data on every summon, every enemy, every in-universe thing. I'm on your side, and I'm the most powerful being that exists. There is no, if they don't do that, it's weapon. A waste of a remake trilogy.
Exactly. You don't fight and dethrone God. You just grow God, and he's like part of your party.
That should be it. Like, people are like waiting for someone to defeat Sephiroth, and like, we built young Sheldon God in Final Fantasy universe.
That's right.
The thing about Chadley is that he's the game structure. He's the entire game structure. He is the foundation of all these quests and the way the open world is structured. So it's really fascinating. I like him as a character, and I like his new my character that he created for himself too. Basically,
I like when he turns her down. That's the only time I like hearing from Chadley. When Mai's talking and then he turns her down, I'm like, that's pretty funny.
That was really funny.
The rest of it, I'm like, I could probably do a little bit less Chadley. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But definitely by the time after I finished the Proto Relics in Junon, and I decided once I got to Costa del Sol, I was like, I'm just gonna the speed run the rest of this game. I spent enough times. I understand the structure, so let me just finish the game. And part of it was because I felt like I was under deadline and I wanted to finish it before I ran off to DICE in Vegas, which I did. But also, I just really, really wanted to find out what the hell happens in the ending. I've just been dying to know what they do after the ending of Remake, and I was like, okay, well, what do you guys got planned? And so I just really, really wanted to it was a curiosity that really drove me, propelled me forward.
There's been a lot of chat about, and especially in reviews and stuff, where people didn't. We're not going to spoil the ending here. I don't even know what it is.
Neither do I.
A lot of people are kind of saying, yeah, love this game, but the ending is kind of weird. And for some people, it's soured the experience. I'm not going to lie, for me, chapter 11 onwards has soured the experience because the pacing there goes off a cliff, I think. But
Interesting.
I don't have the context of playing the original Final Fantasy VII.
Oh, that's right.
I am kind of coming at it from, I know the broad strokes of the ending. I know the broad strokes of the events.
Sure.
How did, obviously Ralph, not for you, but Gene, Ian, Tam, how did the ending sit with you?
Poorly. Very, very poorly. I think that
wonderfully for me, but I love to hear from Tam.
I've
been waiting to hear from Tam for this. I even asked when I saw Tam and Dice. I was like, "Did you finish it?" And he was like, "No." I was like, "God damn it!"
So like, we're not going to detail what happens, right?
Yep. No.
Okay, cool. So I think
I don't think so. Yeah. Well, we both haven't finished it.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. I think I think the ending is fine. I think the delivery of the ending is so poor that it makes the ending worse than it is. And it feels like a story that the more you think about, the more you realize there's fundamental pieces of that narrative that feel missing because of the way that they deliver it and they execute on that ending. There's parts of it that I'm like, I feel like if you had done this, and this, which feels like it could have happened in these chapters, this would have made sense, but they didn't do it. And and where the game is going, I feel like I have a very good idea of what the next game is going to be based on it. But in terms of the actual ending itself, I thought structurally and like in terms of how it was delivered, very poor. And I feel like a lot of the issues that it has are the fallout of that. There's key moments in the original game that are we allowed to talk about spoilers of the original game?
I mean, that's a good question because New York Times got in a lot of trouble for that.
Well, I mean, that's the other thing. The thing that has absolutely been killing me is that Square Enix has marketed this game as standalone and welcoming for newcomers, and I think couldn't be anything further from the truth.
Yeah.
There are some bits,
it's just marketing lies.
Even in the recap of Final Fantasy VII, there are such key things that they miss, even from Remake. I was playing it and characters were popping up, and I was going, "Who the hell's that?" And I played that game. I just didn't play the original. But I think there are definitely some story beats that just are not hitting for me. And like we were on the Giant Bomb thing, Tam, and like everyone, I was the only person on that panel who had not played the original, and like Emma was saying, "Oh, this hit so hard," and her and Sean were like joking about these moments, and I was just like, I wish I could feel the way that you do. I thought
played
it was
the original.
pretty.
I played the original, and I think I'm closer to where you are, where I like the thing that they do with characters is really well done. I feel like they go deeper on every single character, and it's a much richer story because of it. I feel like the ambition that they had for the overall story, which is on paper extremely clever, extremely brave, and extremely bold. But their execution is very, very bad. And the thing that I was going to say is there's certain parts of characters that, I mean, I've been getting shit for spoiling the ending of the game, even though I 1,000,000% did not spoil the ending.
You did not. I've read your review and you did not spoil it.
But people,
I don't know what happens at the end.
They got into their own brain about what they think did or did not happen, and like inferred an ending that probably wasn't correct. But
No.
there's things that happen in that ending that I think it does a lot of damage to the characters that are in there. I described it as like one or two of the characters have very important moments in towards the part of the story that is the ending of this game, and the new format and the new conceit for the story, because of the way it's done, it undermines those characters in a very significant way. Having said that, it's because there's not a finality to the story in the same way there was in the original, right? Like they need this to keep going for one more game, and things are done and things are like scripted in a way that it feels like, oh, you're changing things here, but not necessarily for the right reasons. You're changing it because you need a conceit to work, and that's the issue I have with it.
How do you feel about that, Gene? Because I mean, you said I mean, where do you land on the ending?
Well, the Tam brings up an excellent point in what he just said last, in that it feels like it was made up for a conceit to make it work, and you hear that in interviews where they're like, this story mechanic was put in place because we can make it more exciting for players. So that's why when there's a 4-year gap in between the games, there can be all this debate and discussion. So it really does feel like that they are just putting things into the story to incite debate and discussion, which is fun, you know, and that is to the prerogative of the storyteller if they just want to spice things up and make things more exciting. In terms of how I felt about the ending, I have complicated feelings about the ending because I did play the original Final Fantasy VII, but I did not understand what the fuck happened at all because I only played it in Japanese. And I really wanted to play Final Fantasy VII like immediately. Similarly to a couple weeks ago, where I was like, I really wanted to get to the ending, right? I was so excited to play Final Fantasy VII. I played it in a language I did not understand, and I had 3 other guys with me. One of them was Japanese, but he did not know Japanese. Also, he knew a little bit. He knew a little bit. So
I would chuck that guy out. I'd be like, you are
This is a
less
very
than
funny
useless to
story.
me right now.
So it's four like Asian idiots, one of them Japanese who don't know Japanese, trying to figure out Final Fantasy VII. And then so when the story moment happens, I was like, what the fuck? Like my healer, you know?
This is so ridiculous.
So that's it. I had no attachment to any characters, like no story. I had no idea what was going on. Like God, when we got to Fort Condor and like trying to figure that shit out, like even being in Midgar and like trying to figure out like the exercise game, like and not understanding English is like completely like balls to the wall, like madness, right? So for me, this entire remake trilogy has been a chance for me to kind of like re-enjoy and re-enter the world of Final Fantasy VII in a context that is actually proper and could hit well. So, you know, I was actually quite disappointed in Remake's ending when I realized that they were going to be changing a lot more stuff, right? And I'm going to be as vague as possible, but when I got to the ending of Rebirth, I now am more happy with what they're doing with the remake trilogy. And I do think that there is so much stuff that isn't answered, and like they just leave a bunch of other crap out there. There's a whole section of the story like throughout the entire game, like not just the ending, right? But it's a big part of the ending as well, right? There's a whole parallel story that we won't talk about. That's very, very confusing, and I don't know what the fuck is going on there. And I decided, you know what, I'm just gonna give up and like not worry about that and just enjoy like the emotional beats and the rides that they're because this is a very, very emotionally manipulative game.
Yeah,
like 100%.
Like certain characters will just be in danger and then they're not. You know, it's very similar to what they did to a certain character and the remake, and they put that character in complete lethal danger, and then they were just fine like after 5 minutes. So this is a very, very emotionally manipulative story where they're just like pulling you in all kinds of directions and they really want you to do certain things.
That's the right thing. That's the right way to approach it. Like, don't think about, because I do understand what's happening with that parallel story, and
it sucks.
And understanding it is making it worse. Where it's like, I do see what you were doing, and you screwed it up really badly. You made this way worse. And like, I can tell you with, I think 90% certainty how the next game is going to be. Like format, I can tell you exactly how it's going to play out.
I also feel like I also have a pretty good sense.
Yeah, and I'm just like, most people are going to like play this game and be like, huh, what's going on? Why did this happen? Why did that happen?
Yeah,
like why is this person important even? But it's like, and it's purely because all the pieces were there, but I am pretty certain some pieces got ripped out, and the stuff that remains is a kind of like hodgepodge things tied together.
It's very much like a mosaic of memories, right?
Yeah.
Which is I think what they're trying to evoke too in the themes of this game, right? Gosh, I forgot what I was going to say. But,
it almost has to be that way though, because if you look at it structurally, right? You look at the first game, highly linear. I mean, it's just off you go. With this one though, you've got an open world, and you can take it at your own pace, and they don't want that world to be just materia rewards and XP gains. They want it to have narrative payoffs. And it's like, well, if you're going to do that, then you need to tell meaningful stories, and you need to bring part of your main story into that open world and allow players to experience it discreetly, So I can understand how you get some of that fragmentation. But I also agree when the parallel story that you're talking about, I'm along for the ride on chapter 10, and I'm just like, come on, man, I've been waiting for a payoff in this for a long time, and you can't. I gotta get the vibe that that payoff doesn't come. So maybe it does, but it's not the right payoff. I don't know.
Maybe it does, and we're just missing it. I don't know. Who knows? But
it's really.
But I was really struck by what Tam said in the Giant Bomb cast, and it's interesting because he doesn't like the ending. But what Tam said during the Giant Bomb cast is the reason why I was able to like the ending, which is that he describes how Final Fantasy is very similar to anime storytelling, right? Where you just really have to get swept up in emotions. And that's where I decided throughout the story, I was like, you know what? Maybe we're not meant to understand this right now, and maybe like it's clear that they're trying to leave a bunch of stupid shit left open for us to debate for part 3, and then maybe they'll answer it in part 3 in a satisfying way, maybe not, right? But I was just like, you know what, I'm just gonna let go and like stop trying to figure this out, because the Tam is right. The more I did try to figure it out, the more I thought it was kind of stupid. Yeah, I was like, maybe I'll just submit to the noise and everything. And then one more point I'll make, and this is something that happened in Remake too, is that this Remake trilogy has an interesting relationship with subtlety, in that the character work is so subtle and so beautifully subtle. Like you can hear it in the voice work, the changes in the tone of voice, the cinematography, the facial animation. They do really good with subtle work. And then when it comes to like the big moments, they just kind of go all out, like really loud. Like it's very loud. The music is blaring. Like the cinematography is like the editing is going crazy. So one example of this happening was in Remake when the Sector 7 Platefalls, right? So I played OG FF7, and OG FF7, the Sector 7 Platefall has no music, and it's just very, very quiet. And like you even see like a news report, and then like you see the reporter look up and then get crushed in the fucking TV screen as you see the family get crushed. Beautifully evocative. Like the cinematography is amazing. And then the one in Remake, there's literally like a J-rock guitar like playing the entire time, like and then you see President Shinra's face, where as in the original one you didn't. And then of course Kate comes into the fray, and then we get the mic, the Snow White mic moment of who the fuck is that cat, And then there's a lot of moments like that in Rebirth too, where they treat similar iconic moments similarly, where there's not a lot of room to breathe in terms of sound, and like not a lot of room to think. You're just meant to kind of get emotionally overwhelmed by the sights and the audio of it,
Yeah, I think it's really interesting that the game, like Square Enix, set themselves up to both succeed in an interesting way and fail in a familiar way in this game, because this game is a remake of the stretch of the game that I would argue is the weakest part of the original narratively. Like it replicates the original really well, in that it makes you do a bunch of shit that is completely pointless, frivolous, and has little to no bearing. And when I talk to other people about it, I'm like, it's a remnant of an era where gameplay came first, and then story was forced into like bending around it. So the story that happened in Final Fantasy during this chunk was entirely defined by the fact that they had these mini games that they wanted people to play, or this dumb shit that they had come up with. We came up with this little area called Gold Saucer. What can we make people do over there? And that's effectively the stretch of the game in Final Fantasy VII that this game is, and it feels as annoying in this game. But the problem is the narrative has is up until this point is way more intricately told and way more sophisticated. So the narrative momentum is much, much more intense than in the previous original one.
Mhm.
And the characterization is top notch as well. So you really care about where this story is going.
Mhm.
And then they like brick wall you with Costa del Sol, the whole like the parade, the
Parade, yeah,
choral
sure.
stuff where you're trapped in the prison, and then other things that happen going forward where it's like, oh, I've got 20 hours of just nonsense in between, which is like they also needed to come up with something to go there, because like you can't have this chunk of the game just be completely narrativeless. So they use the kind of like the new meta narrative to kind of paper over some of those cracks in a way that if they had paid it off well, could have been really smartly done. But it falls apart. That's the problem. Like, so instead, what you're left with is bad payoff and a massive stretch of the game that is just kind of like, why am I doing this? Isn't the fate of the world hanging in balance? Why am I playing Duck Hunt? It's crazy.
The thing is, the fate of the world is not hanging in balance. The entire story of Rebirth is that like this is all character driven. They're going on this adventure because they want to, you know, or because Cloud is deranged and he thinks that we gotta follow Sephiroth.
Yeah, I mean,
you know?
from their motivational perspective, they think that the world is,
their stakes is couldn't be higher than ever for sure. You know
exactly, and then they're like,
Yeah.
a bikini scene, and you're like, no,
Yeah,
I love this.
exactly. And
I'm not going to
that's why
complain
there's
about
a whole scene where a dolphin has to fling you up to the top city instead of just taking a fucking elevator.
It's
you know?
fantastic,
incredible.
yeah.
Yeah, but see, the thing is, I don't, because obviously I haven't finished it. So when you talk about payoff, I can't comment on that, right? But all I'll say is that 75 hours in, I've definitely felt some of those pacing issues. And I think what you're saying about Costa del Sol, Golden Saucer, being captured, etc., is true. And I definitely see how anyone could arrive at the conclusion that that is too much of a complete stop on the broader plot. And it's frustrating and you just want to push through or whatever. I can see that. I can definitely see that. At the same time, because everything else is working for me so well, I kind of forgive it that. You know what I mean? I'm like, sure, this is going on a little bit too long. I would like to get through this a bit of a faster clip. But overall, though, I'm still super invested in this. I'm still like living for that next cutscene and that next reveal. Like the sense of anticipation that I have right now, even after 75 hours, is like palpable, man. And I am so keen to keep moving forward. So I agree with you. It's a bit much, but I don't think it's so indulgent that it undermines the overall product, for me at least. It's technically weaker, of course, in a sort of impossible objective sense, but I think it's still really carrying itself because of how well everything else works.
Yeah, I think it's more frustrating because you want that payoff to be better and quicker.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with that. Sorry, Lucy,
I was gonna say I wish I was there with you. I genuinely feel like I'm on such a back foot because I don't have this relationship to the original game. The characters are not hitting as hard for me. I actually find Aerith really annoying this time around, and I loved her, and I loved her in Remake. And then unfortunately, my Gold Saucer date, because I accidentally did one more side quest for Aerith, I got her as my date, and I was like,
yeah, me too.
Oh my god,
right?
Anyway.
Guys, my Gold Saucer date for imagine the Gold Saucer date for a Zero side quest run.
Oh,
what
God.
was it? Just
who was it? Was it just Cloud by himself?
I can spoil it. I can spoil it here.
You and Cloud's right hand.
So I guess spoilers for the worst Gold Saucer date. It turns out that you actually end up with the goon squad of boys.
Yeah.
So Sid, Vincent, Kate Sith, and Red just show up at your hotel room.
Are you
door.
joking?
Like,
I would prefer
I'm sorry, but that sounds fucking sick.
It's a pretty good
That
outcome.
sounds incredible.
it's actually really, really hilarious. It's very funny.
I do think a lot about Aerith in this game because I also really loved her in the previous game. And I like in this game I felt a little more annoyed by her. Like the performance is great and like there's something about her though that I find a little bit.
Well, they're pushing her on you.
Yeah, they're pushing her on you. She has this like smug knowingness about her where she knows more than everyone else does. And like it really manifests in her personality. But then also the game does feel like it's pushing Aerith upon you. Even to the point where this is one of the things I disliked about that final chapter, where if you make decisions, I made specific decisions that would put my interpersonal relationships with her on a different standing than I would with someone else like Tifa. But the game forces you into a kind of specific dynamic with her at the end. Where when I got
they
there,
definitely hard steer you.
Yeah,
They're driving the car and they're like,
I was like, by the end, I was like, I've been Team Tifa this entire time. Like, it could not be more clear that I am a Tifa person. But in this final moment, it did something where it was like, we don't care about any of what you think. Like all that work you put in. That's like, you can feel a little bit of that in the entire way where it's like pushing you towards her. And also she's like, she's a bit of a drama queen. Not drama queen, but she's like, she knows things and she's like pulling strings and doing things to be like, she's trying
if
to
she had social media, she would be the kind of girl who would just post an unhappy face and ask everyone, hun, what's wrong? And she'd be like, it doesn't matter.
That is 100%
vague posting. Yeah, vague posting for sure.
She is like vague booking, vague posting, whereas Tifa's out there being like, yes, I got cut. Here's my stomach to show you. And you're like, hell yeah, baby.
I think the other thing to do with the pacing is it's like, I like a lot of the mini games. I think they're really fun. The reason I'm calling out chapter 11 specifically is there is a moment where you are throwing boxes and it is just the most frustrating implementation of any gameplay mechanic I have ever done in my life.
Yeah, Ralph, you like the pacing, but you haven't hit the chapters, the late game chapters.
Fair enough.
Just be warned.
You guys have these. That's classic Final Fantasy, isn't it? Like those late chapters that kind of.
It's bad when you feel like like you can feel like, oh, this is padding. This is
padding.
But that's the thing. Where it's like I was doing it, and I just kind of went, I am actively not enjoying playing this, and I'm only pushing through, like, because I don't have that tie to the original. I'm playing this to talk about it with you guys. I'm playing it so that I can be a part of the zeitgeist and know. Sure. I think if I was playing this game of my own accord, I would have given up the first time that Kate Sith had to throw a fucking box.
I had a moment with the chicken can quest.
So good.
I'm actually
quest
so
is
good
good
now,
to see
dude.
through, though. When you see
That's
that one
so
through,
good.
it's very good.
When you see, we won't spoil that quest, but it
do
is either the greatest quest in the history of video game side quests or the worst, depending on your appetite. And I think the word appetite is operative.
Yeah, I feel like I am so surprised there haven't been certain organizations that we know love to get up in arms about stuff. That
Literally in my mentions, that
quest
organization.
Exists. The moment they figure it out, that is going to be a massive drama.
But to me personally, just by the way, so anyone hasn't played, it's not a spoiler to say that quest involves throwing out a can on the ground attached to a piece of string, and you need to drag this can backwards with this really awkward control scheme that just feels shit. And then if the chicken catches the can, the chicken turns around and walks back to the start, and you need to go. It's so annoying.
No, the trick there is immediately throw the can out.
Diving for it, and you have to.
The dive is
So if here's the pro tip: if the chicken starts walking away, just throw the can immediately.
Throw it again.
And it'll be like, okay, I'll come back.
That process has like all this animation lock that doesn't let you do it straight away, and it's anyway. But my point with this is, I don't think we should take away from like. I think we really need to give credit to just how many mini games there are in this game.
So many.
And how good so many of them are.
Okay.
And the imagination that's been brought to bear across so many facets of this game. Like, imagine what it took to construct some of these mini games. Like, again, think of Fort Condor. Think of the Gears and Gambits. And, like, think of just basic quests that involve entirely new mechanics used just once and then never again, right? It is so rare to find a AAA game that is willing to do that on that scale. The only comparison is Yakuza.
That's it.
That is willing to do that. And this is different though. Like it's because I've only played a limited amount of Yakuza, don't get me wrong.
We'll
but it's
get
a very
you one
different
day. Don't worry, we'll get you.
Absolutely. But it's a very different vibe, and it's trying to do vastly different things than Yakuza is doing. And in the JRPG space, and I know like the recent Like a Dragon has come turn-based combat or whatever else, but this is it just feels so distinct from anything we've experienced before. You know, I really walk away from, well, not walk away, but in the middle of this, I can't quite think of another game that I've played that's quite like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. I can't, you know what I mean? It's entirely unique. And you could say of remake, you're like, this is a really solid game, but it kind of feels familiar. It's got some aspects. The combat obviously was remarkable and incredible, whatever else, but the rest of it felt pretty safe, and you're like, whatever. But this one, the scale of it, the diversity, the imagination, I've never played something quite like this. It's
Remake was a low key Sony prestige game. It was a God of War and The Last of Us, with an interesting, ATB style combat. But in terms of navigation and the level design, it was just The Last of Us. Climbing ladders and walking down the hallways. And so that's why it's really, really stunning. So I actually have an interview with Yoshinori Kitase coming out tomorrow, so it should be out awesome. For the podcast already. But he talks about how, well, this will be a little bit console-worry, but he says if this game was going to be multi-platform, this game would not be, the game design would be completely different. It would not be a seamless open world.
Man, that is a big headline. That's gonna do the rounds. Are you ready for rip your mentions? Well, tomorrow. They're gonna blame you for that stuff. Even though it's him that's saying it, you're gonna get the blame somehow.
Of course. Yeah.
How are we 40 minutes into this chat and we haven't really talked about Queen's Blood?
I haven't played it.
What?
Oh,
what? Dude, did you play 8? Did you play 8?
All the side quests, guys.
Did you play Final Fantasy VIII?
I did.
Did you play much Triple Triad?
Yeah. I know about Triple Triad, so.
This is better than Triple Triad. I never thought I could say it.
So what's funny is that literally, like right before I got into this podcast, I was eating a sandwich and I was on a YouTube watching the Queen's Blood tutorial, because I was like, you know what? Because I actually saw a stream and I saw what happens in the Queen's Blood like storyline, and I was like, you know what? I've been a fool. I should play this game. So I'm doing it now. So.
We had Hamaguchi-san, Tam and I interviewed him last week, the director, and he basically just said, they made a little task force in the dev team. They spent a year making it, and That's amazing. They all love it so much that they 3D printed the board and they like made cards, and they have the back and everything, and it's
that's sick.
And I was like, sell it.
They have to release it single. They have to release that standalone. They'd be crazy if they didn't. Yeah. Like, if Gwent can go out and this has legs enough, I think it's going to need some serious balance changes, because there's some seriously OP cards in there and some pretty like very basic strategies that work every time. But if you can level that stuff out, it's a really great game. And I think I'm
actually excited to get it to play it now.
Yeah, it's super good.
Because I love Fort Condor and the Gears game too that you were talking about. But I love Fort Condor. Fort Condor was my shit. So
yeah, it was fantastic. But what a neat, perfect example of the fact that you've got this card game, but it's not just a card game. It's this meta quest line that unfolds over time. It's got a ranking system. It's got like these cutscenes that play once you reach certain things. It's got that tournament. The tournament on the boat. You didn't experience a tournament on the boat.
I fucking skipped it.
Oh my god, the tournament on the boat is so. I was cheering when this
option to get out, and I was like,
I know,
I'm going to the Forgotten Capital, baby. I'm on my way.
You're literally like, I would rather go to sleep than miss what is perhaps the greatest quest line in the whole game. It's just such a perfect example of how relentless they have been on every aspect to just deliver and exceed expectations. And again, obviously not all of it's perfect, and maybe at that back end it kind of falls apart, but so far I'm just really in awe of how much they have put on the table here, how much work, how well it lands. It's just quite staggering at times. It really is.
Yeah, it's undeniably a great game, like a good game, I would say at the very least. I think like my main issues with it are mainly that story element of it, and I think the pacing is not great at all. Like I can my issue that I put in my review is like, I love distractions. I don't love it when distractions aren't optional. And that's what it is. It's like there's this extended period of the game where it's like, this is the game. The distraction is the game.
Sure.
And that's a problem as you start to reach the end of the game, which is where Lucy is now, where in any other game, if it didn't have that middle chunk of forcing you to do a bunch of random side shit, it probably wouldn't be much of an issue. Like, finishing it up now. But the problem is the impact of all the chapters before it, where you've been chasing red herrings and just like slowly making your way across this world and getting the most incremental narrative like steps forward. That is now coming to like its like fruition in these final moments where you desperately want the payoff. You want to know what is going on, and you're like, fuck, I've got to throw these boxes, and now I've got to even when you get to the Forgotten Capital, there's some stuff in there that I was like, you have not done this mechanic ever. Like
Oh, God,
why
I
are
know
you
what you're
doing
talking
this?
about,
Like
yeah.
why are you doing this? Like
The
this
one
is a
with
format.
Aerith?
Yeah, the split where it's like you've never done this before. You haven't done this in remake or most of Rebirth, as far as I know. Why did you do this now? And it's clearly because they were like, we can get some extra hours out of this. And it's just
Yeah,
like,
right,
okay.
fuck, man.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but like I'm the only reason I'm not even upset about it. I gave it 8 out of 10. I said it was a great game. But like
Yeah.
the reason I'm like more passionate about how much I'm disappointed by that is because I care about this franchise. I care about this game, and I'm like super excited about where it's going and what it could be overall.
Did you just?
And-
I'm not mad. I'm disappointed. Final
I
Fantasy
am not
VII
mad
Rebirth?
at Final Fantasy VII. I'm just disappointed. That is the,
On that note, can I open up the discourse that I know
No.
is going to make everyone mad?
Mhm.
And can we talk about this game versus Final Fantasy XVI?
Oh yeah, let's do it, baby. Let's do it.
Yeah.
You want that heat, Ralph?
I am ready for that heat.
What's the
Dude,
hypothesis?
extremely.
What's the?
Well, I mean, I'm interested in your views because I know, Gene, you loved 16, right?
I didn't. I love 16, but I didn't love 16, right?
Okay,
But
okay.
I think 16 was good despite.
Sure.
I think 16's issues are so obvious that I can't help but not hate them. You know, because its flaws are so obvious. I was like, how did you guys not miss this? Okay, well, whatever. You know.
Yeah. And where did you land on it, Tam?
I thought it was okay. Like I enjoyed parts of it. I
Yeah.
like it in concept. I love the idea of. I always wanted the summons to be more important again, and
Mhm.
that's what this game does. I feel like it's really clever narratively that they're like these basically are nuclear weapons that these
Yeah, I love
various
that.
kingdoms have. Very
Mm.
clever. I liked a lot of the performances. Obviously, our boy Ben is very, very good as Clive. So like,
Amazing.
that is good. I feel like the rest of it is. I find it to be very forgettable. Like I think it's a very forgettable Final Fantasy.
Mhm.
Even
Yeah.
not as much as like the lads on tour Final Fantasy game. I forgot which one it is. Like 14,
15.
With the
Yeah.
boys.
Like that is
15,
a
yeah,
game.
the
That is a
boys.
game that I don't like, but it's more memorable to me
Yeah.
than,
Yeah.
I totally
than
agree.
16.
Yeah.
Totally agree.
And
You were saying something like that too, Ralph, in your review.
Yeah, I think 15 had a lot of heart, and it really. Yeah, that 15 definitely. 15 was like objectively pretty shit, especially at launch. It got better as they added DLC and like filled out the gaps because that game was unfinished when it launched.
Oh,
But if you
God.
added in the other stuff and controlling other party members, it eventually becomes this package that because it's so sincere that it kind of works. But I don't think anyone could say that Final Fantasy 16 is not sincere either. Like there's a lot of heart in 16. It really is. Like it commits to these singular things so much. It's like we have this one character who we just pour everything into, and he does this incredible performance, and it's everything, you know. And you've got this world, that's so brilliantly constructed in terms of its politics, and you've got this combat system, which is, you know, I don't know. I don't love that combat system, but it's clear that a lot went into it, and they really tried to commit to that idea.
Yeah.
And you've got this one main quest line because the side quest stuff is pretty much non-existent. So it's this very singular thing that they committed to. And as I've said since, I do think history will be kind to 16 as a flawed game,
Yeah.
but one that really put it on the line and with its ambition, right?
Mhm.
But-
it is the Advent Children of the video games. Like they
No
needed
shit.
a
That's a good way
thing
to-
they needed a Final Fantasy thing to appeal to a broader group of people, a broader demographic. That's what Advent Children or like Spirits Within was, right? Like it was
Sure.
it was a movie that at the height of Final Fantasy success, they were like, let's take the next step and make this a mainstream thing that everyone loves. So they made the Spirits Within, and everyone went, what is this? And they moved on. I feel like
and then Square
16
nearly went bankrupt.
Yeah, I feel like
and then
16
because everyone went, this is not Final Fantasy VII. I remember
and
that. I remember
I feel
that
like
time.
16 was the game attempt at that, where they were like, let's make a Final Fantasy that anyone can conceivably play.
Well,
that's
I
where
mean, to be reductive, it is the what's the Witcher Game of Thrones thing that we can
Yeah,
throw at this.
yeah.
Like they would
Yeah.
not necessarily shy.
I feel
about
like
that.
more it's more evident in mechanics, if you know what I mean, because it's quite alarming how much of what is fundamentally Final Fantasy is jettisoned to make 16 what it is. Like there's no real progression system. There's nothing like the materia system, the junction system,
Yeah.
sphere grids. That is like an essential part of Final Fantasy. That's gone. There's not really much weapon swapping, if any.
There's
You have,
no
like-
weapon
Yeah,
swapping.
exactly.
No, it's
That's
just a
like
linear
Yeah.
progression.
I mean,
you know?
imperative.
There's
is
no
it an
party.
RPG?
Yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
like
We all
the
remember
thing-
that
question,
discourse.
Luce.
and even the core mechanics, which is they're like, let's make this an action game. They basically designed it to be like streamlined and as smooth and frictionless as possible in terms of how you engage with it. It's almost, I would describe it as a one button mode version of like a Bayonetta style game, where it's like you can just palm the controller and chances are you'll win and be fine, and like that works for them. But I think for people like us who are like more into like the nitty gritty stuff, it's like after an hour you're like, don't really care about this.
Yeah,
And
yeah, I
that
know what
made
you
it
mean.
forgettable. So all it really had was the characters and the story, and unfortunately, like it like no story, nothing, not even a great story with great characters can carry an experience for like 50 hours. That's like too much to ask for the game.
Yeah. I mean, and I want to be clear because I think people get really annoyed when you make this comparison, right? And they're like,
People
why
get
can't we
so
just
annoyed.
And it's like, why can't we just enjoy both? It's like, you can enjoy both, but you can also talk about both. That's
Yeah.
allowed. It's all right to compare media. You know what? It's
Especially
fine.
if they're both
We're gonna
called
be
Final
okay.
Fantasy and they're
Totally.
both, and they're released within like 10 months of each other. You know?
Exactly. Exactly.
And they're both exclusively on the one console. You know.
The other thing
Come
is
on now.
the other thing is like the format and the design core and the framework of Final Fantasy 16 and Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is extremely similar. Like it's, if you look at it, like the open world style, the zones, the kind of like side quests, they've formatted very similarly, I think. But the level of depth in Rebirth is just on another level. Like it is so much better.
Yeah.
And like
Look at the
they
town
like
of
really
Calm.
filled it out.
The town of Calm itself, the very first town in Rebirth, is vastly more complicated than anything in Final Fantasy
Absolutely.
16, including your own base. You know.
Yes.
The only thing I hate about every single one of those towns is everyone's dialogue
box.
triggers when you're
It's-
right
Oh,
next
yeah.
to them,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
when
yeah.
you leave and come back, and they will do the exact same thing
I
again.
had
They
to, I
will,
had to
yeah.
turn off the running
Oh, yeah.
conversation thing in the corner because I was like, this is just too much on the screen
Yeah.
at once.
It's
Shut
getting
up, shut up.
spammed.
The,
leave me
the
alone.
other thing that I've seen more people talk about it now, and I keep bringing it up, is like Final Fantasy does this thing where it does like these really sad, tragic scenes, and then it will go into a battle, and everyone's like, "I'll show you what I can do," and you're like, "Oh, for fuck's sake!" You're like, "You were crying a minute ago. What are you doing?"
yeah.
It's very Sonic the Hedgehog. You know, Cloud is like,
Yeah.
like look out, hello.
Yeah.
And Aaron's
Your
like, I'm
turn.
coming.
And you're
You
like,
know.
"Oh my god."
But for me personally, I think Rebirth has just felt like such a revelatory experience almost, because I was so down on 16, and I know a lot of people loved it. That's fine. Don't want to take away from your enjoyment, but I saw just so many gaps in 16 where I'm like, I wish it had this, because I really want that. That would be nice. And then Rebirth just has all of those things, and they're all fantastic. Like even just the combat system in this game, it's so good. Like I just even 75 hours in, I'm excited when the combat music rolls, and I'm like ready to fight a new foe that I've never before. What's its weaknesses? What's going to be the best way to bring it down? Like, and the sheer number of like the party members, when I get bored of one party member, I can switch to another one. There's a whole new style of fighting waiting for me. That's so fun.
It's like a fighting
You know what
game.
I mean?
It's like a fighting game's worth of characters in an RPG, you know, which is amazing.
Absolutely. You know,
And
and
the synergy stuff is so smart.
The synergy stuff is amazing. Oh my god.
yeah, I 16's combat, I think on the surface it's good, but when you really dig into it, it's just a lot of cooldown dumping, and you're just cycling through your cooldowns, right? And that's and it was really easy. I was really challenged by Rebirth's combat early on when I started doing the combat simulator stuff. I was like, this is hard, man. How am I dying? I'm like 10 hours in. What's going on, you know?
Assess every single fight. I just throw assess in straight away because I'm okay, I got it. I like how it forces you to think tactically. It's nice.
I described it in my review as it's not like an action game, it's a puzzle game now. And that's why I feel like the best example of that is they now have, and they've never done this before as far as I know, they allow you to cast elemental spells without using MP. And like once I saw that, I was like, oh,
The synergy
that
moves.
is fundamental. Like you need to use exploitation, and then the synergy moves using them to like basically speed up how quickly your ATB bar works. It's like, oh, those two things have turned this game into what is effectively a high-speed puzzle game, and it's so
It's
clever.
brilliant. It's
Puzzle
so
game
good.
is a really good way to put it. the way I thought about it is like, holy shit, this is just like Final Fantasy 13 again, which is Final Fantasy 13 was very puzzle like too. It's like you do this, you do this, you do this, and then you have your little not gambits. What do they call the paradigms? You know,
Paradigms,
so you're tailoring the paradigms to fit certain like elements. So it's kind of like a puzzle game, and so it makes sense that Naoki Hamaguchi was a huge part of the design team of Final Fantasy 13, and it's like a lot of that transferred over. I feel like a lot of that combat knowledge transferred over to 7 Rebirth.
It's just it really, for me, I'm just so glad that this game is what it is. You know, I love Rebirth and I really appreciate what Square tried to do. And like, Yoshi P, endless amounts of admiration for that dude. Like he really is just a once in a generation game creator, 100%, right? But I personally just didn't click with this one thing that he made. You know what I mean? And that happens sometimes. And then this other thing comes along and I'm like, okay, I really understand more deeply now why it is that I love Final Fantasy the way that I always have. Why I love Final Fantasy as much as I do. Rebirth has really reinforced that for me.
Because it has those elements that you wanted. You know.
It has those elements that I wanted. And I think for me, this is hitting as hard as like 10 did the first time I played 10, you know? And before that, 8, but not as hard as 8, because 8 was my like first, and that was like, incredible for me. But definitely that step up with 10, where I'm like the production values and what this means, and just everything. And I know not everyone loves 10, sure, whatever, but that's mine. That's the one for me. And Rebirth is hitting in that same way. And I'm just so in love with it. So
so in my review, I actually called this the best Square Enix game since Final Fantasy X. Because it completely reminds me of like the vibe I got from playing Final Fantasy X, this magical world.
Square Enix game,
except for 14, and I think we have to give 14 its due.
Well, I mean, there's 14 obviously. I meant single player, but yeah, 14 obviously.
Yeah,
right?
I get you.
And then there's Dragon Quest 11 too, so I get it. So.
But I haven't played the Dragon Quest stuff. Am I missing out on a lot?
I haven't finished Dragon Quest 11 yet, so there's that. But it's great.
Okay.
But yeah, it's a very different type of game. One thing I'll say about 16 and 7 Rebirth is, for me, the biggest difference and the biggest reason why I vastly prefer 7 Rebirth is the world design, the map design. 16, when you really break it down, it was also similar to Final Fantasy VII Remake. There's a lot of hallways. Maybe there'd be a big like Ocarina of Time style like hub world map or whatever, and then it'll just spool out into different hallways that lead into like other hallways and other towns and other types of spokes, right? Whereas in 7 Rebirth, this is I couldn't believe it when you can park the buggy in the gold saucer and then drive it out of the fucking gold saucer, and then you drive the buggy from the gold saucer area, the Corel Valley, into Gongaga across the river, and I was like this is exactly what I wanted from a Final Fantasy game for ages, and they've never been, besides Final Fantasy 14 and in 15, but 15 was very empty, right? They've never been able to create a seamless open world. They tried that with Calm, the Calm lands in Final Fantasy X, but that was the only section of the game where you can roam around, right? Same thing in Final Fantasy 13. They had the Grand Pulse area. That was the only area. That's the best part of the fucking game, right? Yeah. And then so now, what if they just made a Final Fantasy game that was just the best part of those games, and it's just like the whole game? That's what 7 Rebirth is to me, They just took the best parts of those games and they decided, hey, why don't we just make the game like this? Yeah, and they did it.
Well, a lot of feelings about Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. I assume we're going to be talking about it again, especially Ralph, when you have finished playing it. When I've finally
see that there's a fly in my room.
Get him, Tam. Get him. Don't put up with that shit, man.
The oceans to get to Towson. Gene, Tam, thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you guys again soon.
Bye.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Take care. Bye. Are you an artist, photographer, or someone who works in the visual mediums? If so, I'm jealous of you. I wish I had skills like that. Imagine being able to draw something and it not look terrible. That would be cool. Anyway, if you fall into that category and you are looking to promote your work, then you might want to think about publishing a portfolio somewhere, and there's no better tool to help you do that than Squarespace. Squarespace have ready-made portfolio templates that you can select and immediately begin customizing to your personal taste. When you're happy with the design, you can begin uploading your work, and it's going to look super professional because that's Squarespace's speciality, professional-looking websites. It's not just about looks though. Squarespace can help you promote your work through email campaigns, through SEO tools, and through social media integration, so your work can be discovered and shared. You don't need any knowledge or experience to get started with this stuff. Squarespace have put in all the work to make the entire process so easy and so seamless, even for absolute beginners. As I mentioned earlier, Squarespace are a long-running partner of this channel, 3 years running now actually. I really appreciate that support. Squarespace are helping me turn my passion into a career, and that's what they do for a lot of people, because if you want to turn your passion into a career, then a website is a really good place to start. To get started, visit squarespace.com, and if you really want to get serious, visit squarespace.com/skillup to get 10% off your purchase of a website or a domain name. Thanks Squarespace for sponsoring the video, and thank you for watching it.
All right, time for a user question. If you have anything that you want to ask us, please email it over to contact@friendspersecond.com. Someone emailed, I just want to say, hang on. I replied to the email, but just in case they don't get it, someone named Kyle messaged and they said, you don't have to read this on air. Just want to say a quick thank you to Lucy for mentioning the show Titanic in New York.
Oh, yeah.
And if
I remember when you said it.
Yeah. And he said, my husband and I went to New York to celebrate our anniversary with some friends, and they decided to go see the show, and everyone loved it.
Hey,
So-
nice job.
Nice.
Just a
You did sell it
curator.
pretty well, to be fair.
Yeah.
Like, I definitely would have seen it had I been in the greater New York area. I would have sorted out.
So shout out to Carol, like if you're emailing that. And he sent it to contact@friendspersecond.com. Just like Harvey Brown did. He said, hi guys, absolutely love the podcast. You make my long commute to the office so much more bearable, and I'll forever be grateful.
Wow, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.
My question is, being in my 30s with a full-time job sadly means having less and less time for gaming. The big AAA titles are too damn long. You can see why I put this in after the Final Fantasy chat.
Sure.
So I'm naturally gravitating towards the smaller games. Do you have any short game recommendations, or maybe even recommended suggestions on how to continue playing the long games when my day is mostly filled with a boring job? Thanks, guys. Steam Deck.
Yeah, good question. A Steam Deck. I was going to say, that's the starting point for this conversation, isn't it? Like, everyone needs to have a Steam Deck. Everyone just needs to have one. It's just, that's it. So, yeah, I mean, look, if you haven't checked, the Switch obviously plays the same function, for sure, right? By and large, it's got that more limited library, but it does have the Nintendo stuff, which is great. So playing portably is really good, but I think the Switch just opens up so many more opportunities in terms of how vast that library is, and also Switch is at its end of life cycle, right? Whereas the Steam Deck's still got a ways to go before they're going to move on from that hardware. So I would say definitely think about that.
Well, that's the best
for me
thing. Like, we're assuming that they take the bus or public transport. If you are driving,
Sure.
don't play the Steam Deck while you drive.
I mean,
Steam Deck while you're driving.
But if you are watching some stuff on TV and you have the messed up millennial brain that we all have, where you can multiple screen at once, ruining your attention span even more, Steam Deck is great. So
Also, I think if you had like a lunch break or whatever,
Yeah.
I used to play games on my lunch break. Everyone else was working at their desks, and I'm like, I am not engaged enough in this job to do that. I'm going to go play some video games. So
good
that was
point.
that. But I would say as well, like, just also picking the types of games, obviously, I think AAA games, it depends. I wouldn't say AAA games are... That's a good question, actually. Do you think most AAA games are long these days? I think the AAA game this generation is definitely longer than the last one, right? Let's say, like, take Last of Us, for example, where last generation was a really tight 15 hours.
Yeah.
Well, that was 2 generations ago now, was it?
Yeah, it was PS3.
Yep, that's right. And so now Last of Us Part 2 becomes 25, the God of War games, most recently Ragnarok is now 40-ish hours. Your average, Spider-Man, I think, is a bit tighter. You're looking at around like 25 to 30 for that one, but even that's still 30-ish hours. Your Resident Evil stuff is probably a good example of it keeping to a tight 10 to 15 hours, and that doesn't feel too long. But generally speaking,
Assassin's Creed,
I do
though.
we're not even going to mention that.
I know.
No. But Mirage, I think, is a good example of the opposite. Because what is that? I can't
15?
remember how long that was. That was 15
I beat
or
it
so,
in
wasn't
13, yeah.
it? Yeah. So I would, but that also was that AAA? The price tag wasn't quite there,
also
and it was
wasn't
obviously
good.
limited.
So sorry.
I agree with you on
I
that
agree
one.
with you there.
Some people liked it. Regardless, I would say, the average AAA game has gotten longer. Definitely feel your pain on that one. digging into the indie scene is really rewarding because your average indie game is much shorter. And in particular, there are certain types of indie games that are like Vampire Survivors, for example. And if you ask for a recommendation, if you haven't played Vampire Survivors, get yourself a Steam Deck, play Vampire Survivors, don't play anything else because you won't want to.
Oh,
It's
no.
just going to be in that.
Oh, no. I'm going to talk about it later, but can I tell you about a little game called Balatro?
Oh, of course.
Please.
But there's always that style of
Yes.
like indie game that really just captures the attention and it just sucks you in, and they're short, right? They're meant to be short. So that's why I think the Steam Deck is also a really good device because it does have all of those indie games on there, whereas only some of them make it over to Switch. So yeah.
Also, Netflix has a lot of really good games that they have put on mobile that no one knows about and that no one, I don't know, it's not, you can open that Netflix app and it's not really screaming about the games that they have, but they have some really cool shit on there. They've got like Immortality, they've got,
they do.
what's the tile-based one with the mechs and you push stuff?
Now
I think that's gonna.
I can see it exactly in my head.
Yeah.
I know exactly. It's that's gonna piss me off so much. Anyway,
you Google. I'll continue my thought, but like
Into the Breach.
Thank you,
Into the
God,
Breach.
so much.
Yeah.
There's
So
some
good.
great games on Netflix. So great games on your phone. There are things like xCloud, PlayStation. You can stream to. You can use remote play and everything. So there are ways of like fitting gaming into your life that you don't have to be at a PC or a console for. I think in terms of, as someone who's in their 30s with a full-time job, and also yes, I don't play games during the day very often at work. Like the vast majority of my gaming is done outside of work because my day job involves so many moving parts. Like I'm writing, hosting, management, meetings. Like it's tough to fit in gaming. So what I do, I think I've talked about this before, is I time block pretty vigorously. Like I plan out my evenings so that I don't waste time scrolling, or if I know that there's a game that I have to prioritize for work or for FPS, I have it in my calendar. So it's like tonight I'm going to spend 2 hours playing Final Fantasy, and then I'm going to put half an hour aside to cook and have dinner, and then I will watch a show. And yeah, I'm a chill person, I promise, but it does help.
Also, genre consideration. I would say branch out. If you only like a certain type of couple of games, but they're too long, try looking around. Because I mean, something like Dead Cells, maybe you're not really a roguelite person or whatever it's called. Dead Cells really lends itself to runs and just like, oh, let me just do one. And those bite-sized offerings that certain genres provide can kind of nestle into your busy life a little bit.
Hades, for example.
Yeah.
Perfect one. If you haven't checked out Hades,
Also coming in Netflix,
I agree with
right?
that. And I think that decision about genre is so important to me at this point in my life because I look at so many JRPGs, for example, and I'm like, I would love to play Tales of Arise. It looks fantastic, and I'm like, I can't really fit that into my schedule right now. And I'm playing Final Fantasy VII, as we just spoke about, 75 hours deep, massive game, still going, right? So I pick and choose my genres. I look at competitive shooters as well. I'm like, do I have time to invest in that and get good at it? Probably not. So I muck around with the finals because I love the finals, but I'm never going to become super invested in it because I know I don't have the time to do that. So that genre discussion and that thinking about genre is definitely become way more important with the way that I think about what I'm going to play next. Absolutely.
Yeah. I think as well, there are some, in the indie scene in particular, there are some really great short narrative driven experiences, like Venba, for example, like finished that in 2 hours. What was the other one? No.
Doki Doki.
I mean, I had a good time with it, but I don't think everyone else will. Stuff like Venba was really great.
I'm trying to think of Lucy games like Mr. Frog lives on a farm or some shit.
I have a game called Frog Detective, actually, that I want to play.
I've seen that one, actually.
Chance of Sinar, the language one, like a puzzle game. There was another one.
Cocoon. In that same sort of ballpark. I mean, Dredge is like 15 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no shortage of... And that website, by the way,
Humanity.
How Long to Beat It, is really good. Oh, Humanity is really, That website, How Long to Beat It, is really good because it does give you a broad sense of how long it would take to play through something. And so a lot of my prioritization about what I'm playing is derived from like, well, how much time do I actually have to play this game, given everything else I've got going on in my life and whatever. So, yeah, I'd say that's also useful as well.
Yeah. Thank you for your question. Next up, we have got an interview with Seth from the Pacific Drive team. Do you guys want to tee it up?
Yes, Seth Rosen from Ironwood Studios. He's the game director of Pacific Drive, a game that we've talked about, we really enjoy. So we wanted to pick his brain on it a little bit. So we thank him for joining us, and we're going to run that now. So, Seth, thank you for being here with us. Clearly, from our videos, we are big fans of the game, and we definitely want to talk about that with you. The first thing, though, just for some context for the folks out there, we spoke a little bit before we were recording about other games you've worked on. Essentially, how did you get to this point working on Pacific Drive?
The thing that led most directly to working on Pacific Drive was that I'd worked on various Don't Starve things for a few years earlier in my career. I joined Clay at just about the tail end of the 6 months of free content updates for the original release. And the first thing that I did was working on the Screecher total conversion horror mod that we did. And then I was one of two designers on the Reign of Giants expansion. And then I was the project lead for the first year or so of development on Don't Starve Together, kind of seeing it through initial release and bring it to parity with the Reign of Giants expansion. So yeah, that experience of having worked on a popular, successful, I think pretty good video game about surviving lent itself nicely to Pacific Drive, and you know, the way it actually came to pass was that a mutual friend of Alex Draycott and our creative director and studio head and I's put us in touch when they needed a little bit more design help. And we got on a call, and you know, Alex he gave me like the elevator pitch, and he was telling me about some of his inspirations, and he mentioned Don't Starve. So that's like the sort of relevant bit of experience. But you know, I've been making games for a while. Worked on BioShock Infinite and Mafia 3 were kind of the other major titles there.
Yeah, wow. Okay, cool. At a high level, like, survival is a funny genre, right? It's really huge without it necessarily seeming like it would be naturally very big, you know, because you hear about these like big first-person shooters and these narrative games and these Sony games and whatever else. Survival, though, is just gigantic, but it almost seems like it's under the radar a lot of the time. And it's like the AAA scene doesn't know how to tackle it or is too scared to do so. I mean, you had Blizzard, who worked for like 6 years on their survival game, and then they threw in the towel, you know what I mean? So I guess my question kind of has two components. Number one, why do you think survival games have the appeal that they do? And secondly, why do you think the broader, large-scale AAA industry has been unwilling to tap into that up to this point?
Those are interesting questions. I think as for the question of like why are they so compelling, like why is there this kind of like constant undercurrent of quietly huge survival games? I mean, maybe let's pause here and define that a little bit more, actually. I think there is a meaningful difference between a single player survival game and a multiplayer survival game. I think there is a meaningful difference also between survival games that are focused on kind of like monument building and base building, and survival games that are about sort of like uncovering and understanding a world. And they all tend to have this crafting element too, which is like a very sort of like good dopamine hit, like Lizard Brain, like, you know, especially with Pacific Drive, like lots of people are really enjoying how much it sort of plays into their loot goblin tendencies.
Definitely.
So there's just like a satisfying thing about collecting big piles of things. But then, you know, going back to what I was just saying, like for the multiplayer thing, like that's like a really good sort of low grade activity that you can be occupying yourself with while just kind of hanging out with your friends. Like they're really good sort of socializing experiences in that respect. And I think, you know, you tend to see more of the sort of monument building type experience in those multiplayer contexts, whereas the single player context tends to be more of this like understand a mysterious place type experience. And both of those are offering like things that we as humans really like. On the one hand, being in a group and surviving. Like there is a deep-seated and long history
caveman
of
thing.
Humans in groups surviving together, right? Like there's something probably innate there. And then in the, you know, it's kind of the flip side of that coin in the uncovering the world thing, where you're having to like see something strange, oh, I wonder what that is. Let me poke it with a stick and see what happens. And I learned something through that experience. And then I get to apply that and sort of unpack this like puzzle box over the course of the journey.
So is the shorthand for that like there's Minecraft and there's Subnautica? Is that like
I mean, yeah, those if you were to pick two titles to be sort of the poster children or the banners of these things, I think those are pretty great examples. And then as far as like the AAA thing, I think on the one hand it's a discomfort with like sort of undirected experiences. Like there's, when you put that much money on screen, you really want to guarantee that the player is going to see it. And, you know, to the point where like often on a AAA project, things that are sort of ancillary will just get shunted off and drop to the floor. And I think, you know, there's such also an uncertainty with a survival game as to like whether it's really going to click and connect with people. And without that confidence, it gets really hard to invest the amount of dollars that you are tending to invest in a AAA product. So it's like this pretty risky thing compared to a kind of tried and true formula where they can
AAA looter shooter.
Exactly.
Because they're always so successful.
Notoriously so. Exactly. And you know, to your point there, like it's sort of a false dichotomy of like,
totally agree.
All these survival games, it's the random ones that do well. Like Valheim came out of nowhere. Like there are survival games launching recently that like have done wildly differently.
Yes, very much so.
For me, it's it's always
go on, Jake. Sorry,
I was gonna say for me, it's always like survival game, but like the spin, like what's the spin on it? Is that gonna attract you or not? And for me, it's not very frequently, but for me, it was definitely with Pacific Drive. It was the structure around the car and almost the impermanence of things, like the impermanence of the world, meaning you're not wasting time building giant dumb square houses to like put all your shit in.
How dare you speak that way of the houses we build in survival games, Jay? Come on, man.
But switching gears a little bit, just in terms of the car, I gotta know, is you or anybody else on the team were inspired by a shitty car you had, and what car is that?
So Alex has a Buick LeSabre that is like a legally distinct but very very similar vehicle to the one in our game. You know, the idea predated him getting that car, but it has really become sort of like a team mascot in a way. And like a lot of the Foley for the car in the game was actually recorded by taking that car out and strapping mics to all different parts of it.
Oh, that's good to know.
That's so cool. I love it. I've heard this phrase a while ago that like the sound people have the most fun. Like they have the most fun just doing their weird shit because they can like figure out how to make it work. And like strapping mics to an old like station wagon and driving it around town sounds like a good time. It does sound like fun.
Yeah, I was disappointed to be across the country for that recording session.
Sure. Coming back to, I guess, that question though, in terms of the foundations of this project, like, so where did this begin? Like, who had this idea? How did they have this idea? What was the story of the sort of inception of Pacific Drive?
So it was Alex's idea initially. And
Alex is the game director, by the way, because we haven't clarified that.
Alex Ricard is our creative director. I'm actually the game director.
Sure, so apologies.
No worries. And he's the studio founder and studio head. So you know, the original idea kind of came from him going out on these like solo drives into the wilderness in the Pacific Northwest, where he lives and our studio is based, and obviously the game takes place as well. And just like that experience of, you know, driving down a dark road with the radio up and just being like, man, this is a vibe. There's something here. And then he, in I think 2019, started Ironwood, and got together a few folks, and they started prototyping. And excuse me, they started by building the car itself, and building the behavior where you can like get in and get out, and you're kind of like manually operating all the levers in the car and turning the key and everything like that, like sort of that embodied experience. But they didn't really know like where to bring it, like what the structure of the game was. Like it was immediately compelling to get out and search a container and get some materials and get back in your car and drive a little bit further down. So they had like a lot of the kind of moment to moment core mechanics, at least in like an initial state, proved out. And it was, I think, like summer of 2020 that I got involved in the project. And like I mentioned before, like initially I was just consulting on it, and I kind of thought like, okay, I'm gonna like parachute in and write sort of a design analysis and some recommendations about where they might want to take the title and what kind of shapes it could take, and then off you go, happy sailing into the sunset. And then a few months later, I get a call back from Alex, and he's like, "So, we got a deal. Do you want a job?" And
was that a publishing deal with Kepler, or was that the Sony deal, or it was just a deal?
The initial deal was with Sony. That was
okay,
that was
right.
like our first partnership.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. And like from that like really sticky core experience of like this really high fidelity in terms of number, like the way you're interacting with it, it was clear that there was like a compelling thing there, and that there was like something to be mined in terms of like having this really tactile relationship to this vehicle and being reliant on it. And the first change that we made, I think, when I got onto the project was, at the time, just in the prototype, like all of the like swapping of car parts and everything was done in a meta UI, a menu that would come up and take the whole screen up. And I was like, okay, no, if we're gonna like really nail this, then you need to be working on the car. Like you need to feel like you are using your hands to take care of your car and continue fostering that relationship and developing that relationship. And that was really like the first major step to that kind of symbiotic relationship that we've established with the car. And we just kept leaning further and further into that. Like at the time, I think we didn't have like the ball compass on the dash. We had sort of like a more digital like ring sort of like radar thing where it would like ping and show you like, oh, in this direction is the anchor, and it was sort of like a hot and cold game basically as you sort of like fumble your way through the environment. And then we ended up going for kind of like more in the vein of Far Cry 2, like this fully diegetic map that you have to look away from the road in order to look at, and just like not just the physicality of it, but also the fact that we were putting all of this key information about the world and your car state and kind of ultimately how your run is going into the car itself, like further kind of increasing that reliance on the car, not just from a like it's an exoskeleton, it's your armor way, but also like all of the important information that you need lives inside the car, so you genuinely cannot go that far.
Yeah. It was always so scary being far away from the car.
Oh yeah.
Like I just, there becomes this thing where it becomes this this arc, this kind of like nurturing place, this safe zone. And so there are times when you need to get out of the car and go somewhere. And it always just feels that little bit more scary when you're like over 100 meters away from your car, because you're like, what if something happens? It's a big run back. One time I lost my car because I forgot that I didn't realize there was a compass that points you back to the car when you get out of it. I didn't know this. And so one time I got out of my car, I think my car got moved and I got flipped around a bit and I lost my car and I fucking panicked. I'm just like, shit, man, I got no car. What do I do? I'm so screwed. You know what I mean? Just running around frantically, whatever.
There's nothing scarier than like you're far away from your car and then you hear a horn honking and you're like,
oh god, that
wait,
horn.
That's my car. Oh no.
Yeah.
There's no other honks in this zone. Why are we honking? It's been so gratifying to see that, honestly, because after working on this game for so many years, like genuinely lost total sight of like just how menacing the mere presence of an anomaly can be.
Sure.
Especially early on, like I have such intimate knowledge of exactly how they behave and how they fit into like the overall progression of the game and everything like that I don't think of them as anomalies. Like they're gameplay objects. They have like archetypes and blah blah blah. And my design brain just like can't shut that off. So it's been really cool to see people kind of come into contact with these things and be like, oh right, when you don't know anything about how these things work, they actually almost don't need to do anything just because they're like mere existence is threatening and intimidating.
Yeah, definitely.
And they do things, to be clear.
Yeah, they definitely do. Fucking pickpockets, man. Fuck off. Like, seriously, driving around and I have all my repair. I learned the hard way because you can like put storage racks on your side. Oh, yeah. And I was like, I'll put all the stuff I collect in my trunk and I'll put all my critical repair components in the side racks. And I'm driving along and one of the pickpockets yoinks it. I didn't even realize that he took it. And then I'm like driving, my car is screwed. I'm like, no worries. I got my stuff. I'll hop out. I walk around to the side of the car and I'm like, fucking pickpockets. It was gone. I was so mad.
So in terms of that, in terms of the arduous nature, the brutality of it sometimes, was that something that kind of grew out of all these gameplay concepts over time? Or was that like a mission goal from the beginning to like really challenge the player?
It was pretty baked in. I mean, that was something where I was really drawing on my experience of Don't Starve, of just like, I think something you guys had even talked about in your videos is like sort of how uncaring the world is about your existence and your presence. And I think that's like a kind of key thing about these sort of like puzzle box survival type experiences that I was explaining earlier, of like there is an ecology outside of you and you factor into it and you can manipulate it into ways in certain ways, but ultimately like it isn't something that is like out to get you necessarily, but it will get you if you're not careful. And that's like a really key difference, I think. Like, obviously Don't Starve is a game that does have like hunger and thirst meters and like you're having to manage those, but the rate that they tick down in general is so low that like they're eminently possible to sort of manage. It's more in both Don't Starve and Pacific Drive, the ways that you get yourself into trouble by having too many plates to spin, or by not having prepared quite enough, or seeing something and poking it with that stick and finding out the hard way what it does. And those lessons, though they can be frustrating, like, there is a bitter flavor that comes with those types of like, oh, you poked me, I'm gonna slap you right in the face kind of interactions. But it like, that is the thing that lends the world that sort of intimidation that we were talking about. Like an anomaly like the tourists or the abductors, like if you don't feel like it can really fuck up your day, it stops being a thing that you like are thinking about and worried about. So going pretty heavy on like, look, you're not actually in danger inherently, but if you're not careful, that can change real fast, is like a really important aspect to these experiences, because that is the kind of like friction that is creating a need to develop that knowledge and develop that familiarity and develop that expertise that allows you to kind of progress past these things that were once mysterious and difficult and challenging and get to the next area or whatever it might be.
Yeah, I definitely felt that arduousness. I felt the reward that came from understanding what these things are and learning how to deal with them. And eventually, but even at the back end, it's so menacing. It just feels like this constant tightrope walk. Every square mile that you cross feels like a little mini victory, because some of the maps that you are traversing are quite small. Like if you were just to beeline them with you could get across them in like 2 minutes, but with how dangerous they are and the objectives that you have, you could spend half an hour on that same map, just like trying to survive, and I think that is a really amazing achievement. So yeah, I mean, I think that part of it is really great. I wondered, I mean, it'd be really interesting to dig into some of the more prickly aspects, unless Jake, so did you have another question in relation to that?
Go ahead.
Oh no, cool. some of the more, I guess, divisive design choices that you guys have made. I think the biggest one, yeah, sure. I think the biggest one that has gotten a lot of feedback is your save system. So if anyone hasn't played the game, you are going out on these expeditions, and it's not a contiguous open world, and so you'll head out, and these expeditions can take upwards of, I'm going to say 45 minutes to an hour, depending on how you play it, right? And how you want to go about it. During that time, you cannot save at all. And if you're
wrong, Ralph.
Okay, tell me how I'm wrong. Tell me how I'm wrong, please.
The game saves at the beginning of every level that you load into. So
at the beginning of every new map?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right, cool. Fair enough. So
it's kind of like a checkpoint system where, a map is, you can think of it as a stage or an encounter. And every time you clear a stage, clear an encounter, the game will save. So,
okay, cool.
If your power goes out or your kid wakes up or whatever thing happens that pulls you away from the game, outside of the perpetual stability maps that don't have a time limit, generally you're not losing more than like 20, maybe 30 minutes.
Okay.
So especially, later in the game, as you're going on these like 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 stop trips, and it can, even more than 45 minutes, like you can spend multiple hours on some of these trips if you are taking your time and being a little bit more deliberate and really kind of scraping the environment for all the available resources. But yeah, there is a save that gets triggered every time you do that sort of like fast travel jump to the next area.
Sure.
And it basically, like, because it's such a heavily procedural game, and because of the amount of content that can exist in these different zones, there were plenty of design reasons, but it was ultimately a production decision of just like, we can't come at this. We're a team of 20. We're not going to realistically be able to make everything in those gameplay levels serializable and like load cleanly, and also be able to accomplish everything else that we're hoping to.
So are you saying to me that your decision in relation to not being able to save mid-run is actually a production constraint with relation to how the game is saved? Like, is that what you're saying?
That wasn't like the initial decision, but that was like, so a general thing with Pacific Drive is we have a lot of accessibility options. There's a lot of ways to tweak the experience to be kind of more generous in ways, or more punishing as well. And basically our heuristic there was like, is this part of the game something that, if we leave it as is, will mean there are people that cannot progress through the game? Like we are inadvertently preventing someone from like exploring and enjoying a thing that they are curious about. Like, obviously, we have our default settings and we believe that's the best way to play. But, like I look at Subnautica as an example here of like, they've got all these different gameplay modes, and like, you can have really kind of a chill Subnautica experience if that's what you're looking for. Obviously, there's still like scary and intimidating parts of that game, but in terms of like the core gameplay difficulty and like resource management and everything like that, like, you can kind of just lop that part of the game off. So we wanted to sort of follow in that model, and if it was something that was like quick and simple to implement, we would implement it. Something like player doesn't take damage is quick and simple to implement. Something like all 60 anomalies and however many resource providers can robustly save their state and resume their state, less so.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, I never would have imagined that decision would be led on by that stuff. So okay, that's fascinating.
Well,
okay.
It wasn't necessarily led by that. Like I mentioned, like there were strong design reasons that the save system works this way.
Sure.
Like we want you kind of out over that canyon of like not having that safety net of save games. That's where a lot of the tension comes from.
Sure.
But I bring in the production and sort of schedule considerations as like, okay, yeah, like, a bit of feedback we've gotten from our comms on this stuff is like, well, you have all these other things that like sort of ruin the game or like are counter to these stated design reasons, and that's true, but those things were like so much easier to actually bite off and implement.
Interesting.
Yeah,
never would have guessed that. That's fascinating. So do you plan to make any further changes to the save stuff as it is now, or you're like, nah, we're pretty settled with what it is and it's done?
The save system is pretty settled.
Okay.
What we did last week was shipped a patch that made the saved indicator that you clearly had missed yourself, Ralph,
yes,
so that it now
definitely
shows
missed
up
it
on the load screen. So previously
Okay.
it showed in the bottom right corner after the load screen had hidden. And when the load screen hides, like you're suddenly in this rich world and you're looking around that world and you're looking at like the sort of banner that appears that tells you what junction you're in.
Sure.
And you're not noticing the little saved indicator in the bottom right.
Literally finished the game and thought every expedition I could not save it.
Yeah.
so would have been nice to know that earlier.
I apologize. That it was a genuine oversight, but
Sure.
I like we shipped that patch last week and I made this big post kind of detailing all of this stuff and included that detail. And they're like so many people coming out of the woodwork being like, oh my God, really? It's been saving this whole time.
I am one of those people. We're talking to one of them right now. Oh, I love it. That's great. I love it.
So that's one thing we've done. And then hopefully this week, but possibly next week, we're also like adding a new option in the pause menu that will allow you to abandon save quit option, which like if you need to stand up from the middle of a session and you really don't want to lose what you've collected, but you also don't want to like lose your progress from that map, you can select that option and say like, okay, only for when I select this option do I keep my items. Like I'm going to keep the main gameplay mechanics for when I'm actually playing the game. But if I do need to stand up in the middle of a session and cut it short, and I really don't want to like redo anything that I did, you can kind of like use this sort of early out, like return to the garage, keep what you got. As far as the items that you collected, it will be considered like a successful run. And if you have this setting modified, at least like if you set it so that it doesn't take any of your items in that instance. But what you won't get is the kind of discovery mechanic of a successful run. So like you have that kind of territory control thing of like you pick your destination, you drive there, you escape from it through the gateway, and that kind of reveals the adjacent junctions from that point. So you still have to like get to your destination and progress naturally. I'm hoping that this will give players that are getting frustrated by that stuff the tools that they need to like end their sessions in a way that doesn't leave an overly bitter taste in their mouth. And we're also adding like a pop-up when you start the game that says like, hey, just so you know, this is how it works and there's settings and blah blah. So mostly like a sort of like informational solve here, and providing some ways to more easily kind of tweak the settings that allow you to change what the penalty is for dumping back to the garage early.
Sure. Yeah. You and Jake.
I want to talk about the quirks. The quirks have been incredibly challenging for me. I also haven't like gone online and look and see guides or Reddit or anything about people figuring them out. I just bang my head against it constantly. So what I wanted to ask you, just on the light side, is what did you guys find to be one of the more challenging quirks? I don't know, like in play tests or anything. You don't have to like reveal the solution, but like what's been one of the ones that stumped people the most?
I should probably explain what a quirk is, by the way, for anyone who hasn't played the game.
Okay, yeah. So the quirk system essentially is things will just start to happen to your car. Sometimes it's funny, like you shut the lid of your trunk and every time you shut your trunk the horn honks, but then other things can happen over time that are more problematic, like every time you turn your headlights flicker or one of your doors just never shuts, so you essentially
or your hood pops up and you just can't see anything. Yeah. It's like, how am I supposed to drive when my hood is up? And you literally need to take your hood off your car and put it in your trunk because it's fucking annoying when it's doing that. It was one of my favorite ones.
I love that lateral problem solving from you on that one, Ralph. Like that's amazing. Actually, like months and months ago, we were playing through the game as like a leads group, and I had a flat tire on the front right side of the car. And I also had a quirk that was making my steering wheel pull to the right. And I was just having like most hellish time driving anywhere because I could do nothing but circles, basically.
Sure.
And Alex was like, why don't you take that flat tire and put it on the front left side to counterbalance the pull right? And it worked. It was like this beautiful, amazing moment of just like sort of emergent problem solving. But to jump back to your question, Jake, about like what's the most difficult one? I don't know how to answer that because the way the quirk system works is it's like procedural, like randomly modularly assembled conditions and behaviors. So there is a enormous possibility space. Like, obviously, you know, we've put some safeguards in there to like prevent combinations that just like make the game basically unplayable. But largely, like, everything you're seeing in that sort of like sentence building UI, where it tells you like, okay, for the cause, you have this car part doing this thing, and that creates this behavior where this other car part does this other thing. And basically everything in columns 1 and 2 can be paired with everything in columns 3 and 4. And, you know, under the hood, we have like this sort of rating system where each condition and each behavior, it gets assigned like a pain amount and like an apparentness amount. And we use those to kind of rate like different things for how the quirks get rolled, because, you know, we don't want to like overwhelm the player with too many things that are overly punishing and things like that. And they're, you know, the quirks can kind of come and go, and like those weights, those scores kind of get factored into that as well. So there are quirks that, you know, I've seen people like posting screenshots of their quirk screen, and it says like, you've got 7 quirks, and they're like, I haven't observed any of these.
Yeah, I found myself in exactly that situation.
Yeah, they might be things that just like, because of how you play the game, or because of any number of things, like how you have your car equipped, you just might never see. Like an example here is like a behavior that only happens when your fuel is empty.
Right.
You're not going to see that very often, because
I would have seen it a few times. I'll tell you that. I definitely would have seen it a few times.
Yeah. So, you know, like some of these things are really kind of like buried deep, and might only rear their head like in a really inopportune moment when you're already in a tricky situation, like not having any fuel, Ralph.
Yes.
I think so it like I genuinely don't totally know how to answer that. There are definitely combinations that are like wildly difficult to spot because of how kind of like ancillary they are to some of the core gameplay. But at the same time, that also means it's like not impacting your experience all that much. And I personally really like, and I think it's a huge aspect to the system, that it has this really broad range of like, you can get something that like makes it really difficult to play, and you will figure it out really quickly because of how like interfering it is. And you can have something that you live with a while because it's funny or not that interfering, or you can actually have things that are beneficial, like you know, you honk your horn and it makes your car jolt forward, which if you just keep leaning on that horn is basically a free speed boost. And you know, these things can also chain together as well. Like I saw this amazing anecdote on Twitter the other day where a player had a series of things where like basically they could honk their horn to like turn on their lights and make sure all their doors closed. So every time they got in the car, they just honk their horn, and
that's
off
cool.
we go.
That's sweet.
Sick. You'd be so mad if you accidentally diagnosed that. You're like, no, undiagnosed. I want to stay sick. I wanted to, because we'll have to wrap up soon, but I wanted to talk about the reception to the game. I mean, did you guys, so obviously very broad consensus that this is a great game. You know, you're seeing it in the reviews, you're seeing it on Steam. I hope that it's selling well. I don't know if you have any insight into that you can share.
We're off to a pretty good start.
Okay.
Yeah, we're happy with the sales so far, certainly.
Cool. Fantastic. So I guess my question was, I speak to some game devs and they're like, who have just made like the best video game ever, right? And they're like, we weren't really sure if it was very good before it was going out. You know, it's like, we're just glad it came together in the end. It's like, whatever. So my question to you is, did you know you'd made a great game before you shipped? Or you're like, oh, I don't know about this. This is a bit scary. Like, where were you at the moment before launch?
The answer to that is yes.
You know, you made a great game.
No, all of the above. So to answer more fully, like when Alex first pitched me on the game, you know, he's like, it's this survival thing. You got the station wagon, and it's in this anomaly zone, like heavily irradiated, blah blah blah. And he's like, oh, you know, if you execute on that, like that's gonna be a cool fucking video game, and people are gonna really like it. And then we went and executed on it. And you know, like not to say that we had all the answers at the gate. although quite a lot was really there from the outset. I think the most significant change that we went the two major changes that we went through during development that I think like really kind of locked it into place and like made it all click together. One was all of the tools that you use for like gathering resources and stuff used to be these sort of like transaction, like animation based, like you hold it down for 2 seconds and then it does the thing. And then at like last summer, last summer, we updated it to use the sort of like immersive sim damage model that was being used already for all the damage to the car, and just turning everything into like this sort of more sandbox type experience where you can use the tools in different ways and to solve problems. And if you're in a pinch and you don't have a scrapper, you can use a crowbar to get a couple materials out of something. Not necessarily the best use of that tool's durability, but you can do it. And just like getting it, what it ended up doing was putting players into much more of that sort of like emergent gameplay, creative problem solving headspace that I think is where the game really thrives. And then the other thing was like early on in development, the runs was kind of like you get 3 pre-charted paths and there wasn't like a sort of overworld map. You just got like, here's a node graph and you can pick between like a route that goes this way, or that way. And we eventually added this like overworld map where you're kind of like self-planning your destinations and sort of doing this like chart the zone thing. So I think those were the 2 things that really like unlocked the game as a whole. But I do feel like, you know, we were quite confident that we had something pretty special and pretty compelling. Like the process, it was really when we turned it into this like manual, like you're working on your car with your hands thing, that it was like, okay, yep, this thing has legs, and like the setting is compelling, the lighting is beautiful, the vibes are immaculate. Like this is going to connect with people in a bunch of ways. The thing that I was like most nervous about going into release was just like the balance of it all, like how many items you're finding in the different containers. And you know, like it's funny, having worked on Don't Starve, like my general stance is that materials and items and resources in survival games, it's smoke and mirrors, it's distraction. The only thing that actually matters is time management. Like all of the resource collection is just converting time into these things. And the tension and stakes and intrigue comes from the fact that you're spinning all these plates. Like, in fact, it is generally very frustrating to be playing a survival game where you just cannot find the thing you need. It's much more interesting if you can find it, but you need multiple things simultaneously.
Yeah, definitely. Totally.
So, you know, I was working on like the contents of all the loot containers and the buildings and everything pretty much down to the wire. And even though I like have this intellectual theory of the case and like understanding of how these things tick, I was still just like totally in my head about like, oh, what if I make it too generous? What if it's too stringent? Like blah blah blah. And I think fortunately, you know, it was close enough to a level that like doesn't overwhelm the player, but still is satisfying to collect. Because you also like want to avoid loot blindness, and you want to make sure that there's like pattern recognition in terms of players being able to understand where to go to get certain things and everything like that.
Yeah.
I agree, except we probably could have done with a few more chemicals. Just saying. Chemicals, a little bit on the stingy side. The repair party, very important. Chemicals, very hard to find.
It's funny, like we kind of shot ourselves in the foot by giving you putty in the tutorial, because it kind of sets this expectation of like putty is the way that you solve a damaged panel, when you can always just craft a new one.
Yeah, I learned
and I think
eventually.
if we'd like kept you kind of in that like trash tier a little bit more, there would be like more players would actively realize and use that kind of solution. Because there is like an attachment. It's like, well, I have this panel. Why would I just trash it? I just repair it. A little bit of chemicals on there. Slap some goo.
That's it. And I mean, I would be foolish not to ask, but is there going to be a Pacific Drive 2? Are you guys already working that out or what?
We are not working that out. We are reacting still mostly. Yeah, you know, I like still, in fact, like these few days here, talking a whole bunch with the other directors about kind of what's next and where we want to go with it, and figuring out what those plans are. we'll have to see what the tale is and like how much hunger there seems to be for a sequel. I'm sure plenty of members of the team have some ideas about where they might want to take it, but for now we're just in sort of like support the title, improve like bug fixes, perf, quality of life things, things that we didn't quite get to, like photo mode, for example, is something I know that like is pretty high on our list of like.
Be cool.
Thank you.
It would be awesome to have that.
It'd be nice. Yeah, for sure. Well, just saying, if you made a sequel, I'd buy it, and I suspect a bunch of other people would as well. So just putting that out there.
Under advisement.
Just put that out there. That's it.
All right. Well, with that, Seth, I wish we had more time, but thank you so much for talking with us, and hopefully we'll see you soon.
Yeah. Yes. Thanks so much for having me. This has been great.
Cool. Thanks, Dan. All the best.
I need to get around to Pacific Drive.
You do. You need to be ready for it. I recommend playing it after you've played something really chilled and relaxed. Because if you go from like a big, long, stressful game into Pacific Drive, you're going to be like, I'm not in the headspace for this right now.
Yeah, it's a sweaty game. Big time.
Right.
It is.
That's like me reading House of Leaves and then reading Smut because I need something very involved and then something like boring.
Yeah,
exactly right.
Not
exactly
boring,
right.
but like something that I don't have to have my brain switched on for. Anyway.
Sure.
Time for another user question. This one is from Morgan Mohala. In the evolution of gaming, value propositions have historically been tied to multiplayer capabilities, like the N64 having 4 controllers, online experiences, like Halo 2 multiplayer, enhanced graphics like PS1 through 2, 3, 4, 5, expansive game lengths, like Assassin's Creed Origins, and cultural significance like Fortnite and Roblox. However, with graphics reaching a pinnacle, I am so full of cold, I'm so sorry. And the saturation of remakes and sequels, the current landscape demands reevaluation. Can the panel discuss? I love it. It makes it sound like we're debating something on a TV show.
We're experts, man. We're experts.
Can the panel discuss some things they feel adds value to a game and some things they feel detracts from the value of a game with the players in mind? That's a big question.
Interesting. So what detracts from the value of a game? It being shit.
Yeah.
That's number one.
It being broken.
If the game is shit,
you can't play it.
If the game is shit, then it's got less value than a good game. Okay. But speaking quite seriously though, I would say first of all, like in-game monetization for me definitely takes down the value of a game.
Yeah, predatory in-app purchases.
But even not just predatory, but even just like, even a store, even a shop in general, like even if it's a fair shop, if you are looking to charge people money, then ongoing, then it makes sense that you would charge them less upfront. You know what I mean? I think in terms of that upfront price tag, I'm like, you should probably shave a bit off the top of that if you are looking to charge people perpetually for this thing,
and
right?
get your foot in the door by charging them less upfront, and then.
I mean, yeah, I think that's just a fair trade-off, right? Because obviously some portions of the game are going to be unavailable to people at the beginning by virtue of your monetization model, but you're still charging a full price for that. So I'm not on board with that idea. I don't agree that every game should be free to play, but I do think that if you are looking to charge ongoing for a product, that you should not be charging full price for it upfront as well. That just seems like a bit of a like piss take double dip. You know what I mean? So that's one thing that really reduces value for me. I definitely do not equate. I mean, the thing is, there is some weird connection between game length and value, even though, like, it's different for everyone. Obviously, if a game is 2 hours long, but it hits you in the feels and it does something to you that you are never going to forget, is that game worth $70? In one sense, yes. In another sense, no. We go to the movies and we spent buy IMAX tickets for June 2. I don't know how much you guys spent on that. I think I paid $60 a ticket or something. That's Australian dollars. I don't know.
What does it matter with
really
Australia?
Remember. It's expensive.
It's only a banana, Michael. What does it cost?
Right, but okay, with popcorn, you go there and there's popcorn, okay, and there's the trip out to the movies is going to be in the vicinity of let's say $60 if you get a drink and popcorn and whatever, right? Parking if you drive your car, all that sort of shit. But then you see June 2 and you're just like, holy fuck, that was crazy. And you never think, oh man, that was $60. Was that worth it? I'm like, you just don't do that a value equation. But with video games, you're like, that game, Skull and Bones, is $70 US. That's a ripoff. You know what I mean? Even though that's giving you 15 hours of campaign, And we have just a totally weird, different, skewed version of how we talk about value when it comes to video games. I'm not going to say whether it's right or wrong. I'm just saying it is what it is. There is a relationship between playtime and value. For me, though, it's less important because I'm at this point in my life far more interested in what a game accomplishes in the limited time that I'm able to play it, rather than how long can this game keep me playing. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is not a better game because it's 75 hours long at least. It's maybe a little bit worse for that, versus other games that you play that are just perfect for 30 hours long. That's incredible.
I would say to me that to jump off of that, it's when it comes down to quantity over quality, to me, that is a detractor. I feel like I don't like playing through games where I have to sift through a lot of stuff that's just put there to justify a price tag or to keep me playing longer. And I feel like sometimes it can just get in the way of good storytelling, even because then to kind of kick from that, when games do try games as a service models or monetization or expansion things, and Suicide Squad is like the easy first example, but there's others. I think like Diablo Immortal kind of did it. It's like when you can see the lore and the story just stumbling over trying to explain what is essentially a business model, that to me is a weird turnoff, not just because I'm like, ew, I'm being sold, but also because it detracts from what otherwise could have been some interesting storytelling. And like that's still like what I come to the video games for most of the time. I like games that are idle and I can just, keep clicking and have fun. But I really come to these things for like compelling adventures and stuff. And when it feels compromised in some sort of way, whether it's to jam it with stuff or to jam it with stuff for me to buy, like that for me usually devalues things.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
I have a complicated relationship with the term value. I've definitely said this on the podcast. And also recently, I remember saying it. I think it was in the Suicide Squad chat, where something that Kyle Bosman, formerly of Game Trailers and Easy Allies, said years ago has always stuck with me, which is even a 0 out of 10 game has value. And I think value is such a weird thing because I can be playing a game and maybe Suicide Squad, perfect example, where at some points I thought that the gameplay was really clicking for me and I was actively having fun and I was engaged with the combat, but everything about other aspects of how the games as a service model have been implemented were just turning me off it, and made me want to, like, I wasn't getting value out of that. I wasn't engaging with the system that had, like, this entire elaborate system that had been put in this game, and I was getting zero value. So it was like this weird balance. And so I think something that when I'm thinking about games critically, when I'm thinking about games that I've connected with emotionally, that I've loved, it's something that has created a memorable experience for me. And that could be a storytelling beat, that could be a gameplay mechanic that I've never experienced before, or it's a clever implementation of something that I have experienced before. I think that immediately creates so much value because right now, not to get too deep, but attention span is just being pulled in so many different directions. If there is something in your game that makes me stop for a minute and just fully invest in the game, like invest in its story, or decide that, hey, I'm going to clear my calendar, I'm just going to play this, because I really want to experience the end of it, I think that is so much more valuable than so much of the throwaway media and tweets and videos and news and everything that we're bombarded with every day. And I think video games are very valuable in that regard. And that's what I think makes something valuable.
I agree.
Well said.
For sure.
Thank you. I felt like I was,
nice.
like, thank you. Thank you for another great user question. Like I said up above, contact@friendspersecond.com. Chuck them our way. We love chatting about them. Boys, what else have we been playing?
Nothing, just Final Fantasy.
Just Final Fantasy.
I mean, that's not true. Marvel Snap, but that's always the case.
Classic.
That's not gonna bore you guys with more of that one. But yeah, no, I've just been all in on Final Fantasy. Like, I'm trying to think if there's actually anything that I've managed to sneak in other than that. No, it's just been Final Fantasy. Because 75 hours in like 10, roughly it was just under 2 weeks. 75 hours in just under 2 weeks.
almost
And
a
that's
full-time
also
job.
while doing everything else going on
Yeah.
in my life, you know, and doing a new show every week and all. It's been a lot. It's been a lot of Final Fantasy. So yeah, no time for anything else,
No.
sadly. But I mean, having a ball, as I said in
Mhm.
the thing, but it has been, yes, distracting, quite
Mhm.
distracting.
Well, Jake, then what about you?
Sorry, my cat is like trying to knock my door down. Oh my god! I hope
Can
the mic
we?
didn't pick that up.
No, we
Um,
should did that. That'd be
oh,
cool.
yeah, can we get
She's a
Abby cat?
monster. For me, a little bit of Red Dead Redemption 2 on PC because
Oh, okay.
I have a new
What's prompted
monitor,
you
so
then?
I wanted to test that out.
Oh.
Yeah.
I think I might
What's the
make a
monitor?
video
Is it
about
140? Is it 144
that.
OLED?
It is a to be announced OLED. Yes.
Oh.
Yes.
Thank-
Ooh.
Very fancy.
But I've
fancy.
also been playing Helldivers 2 because that's like an
Yes.
easy casual.
Sure.
I played some
It's-
on
I'm-
Sunday.
it's still good.
It's really fun.
I'm so sad that I've missed out on all this. I really do feel like I've missed an important moment. You know what I mean? And
There's still time. We can play.
I know there is still time for sure, absolutely, and I want to do that. But I also think, well, I've got some stuff coming up this month, which you'll learn about soon. And then look, maybe April is the time where I can go. My desperate concern is that I get in there in April and I'm like, hey guys, let's go. You know, let's spread some democracy. And they're like, we're bored of that game now. We're playing out something else. And I was like, oh man, you know what I mean? Like that's my concern. So I'm hoping that it has legs enough to last until April and beyond, because that's probably when I'll have time for it. So.
Jake, how deep?
Yeah.
How in deep are you on Helldivers?
No, pretty casually, but like
Yeah.
I hopped. So I went hard for the first 2 weeks, and then I kind of bounced off, and now I just hop in casually, and it's still just a lot of fun. It's kind of like a good mindless one where I just want to zap some stuff while also chatting with a friend. You know, just like mowing down bugs, just really reveling in the whole Starship Troopers atmosphere, which I don't know if I talked about that too much on this show, but the fact that they managed to keep that tone consistent is really great, because the game starts with an incredible intro sequence like we saw in the trailer, where it's like a faux advertisement for the military. It's so of that feeling, and I was like, is this it? Like, and now it's just going to be a third-person shooter multiplayer. It still manages to keep that tone from like what the characters say to things that play in your ship in between missions. It's just kind of always got that wacky, zany, what's the word? Like parody.
It's like
Parody thing.
tongue in cheek, and like
Yeah.
even so. There's the store. Everything in the store has a fake review written.
Oh, the reviews are so
The
funny.
reviews are so funny.
I bought two.
That's
I bought one
great.
for my kid, and it's like a fucking battle armor.
Yeah.
Nice.
I was like, my wife said it was either the armor or her. I've got this great shiny new armor. It's like stupid stuff like that.
I think the coolest things that I hear about Helldivers now are the stories of new stuff being rolled out
Oh,
Yes.
yeah.
without any announcement. It's just
Yes.
like all of a sudden someone sees on the battlefield like a mech suit.
Yeah.
And it's just there.
Yeah.
And that's how they're playtesting new content. And I'm like, that is so incredibly sick. What a cool way to drop new content into your game. And with it was just a total surprise. Because I'm like, how is it not being data mined? Like either. Like that's what's curious to me, because it seems like a genuine surprise. But maybe it is being data mined, but I'm just not close enough to the Reddit to see all that stuff happening. But it's there and it's being play tested, and it's so awesome to see that is how they're demoing new shit. You know, I think about if I was playing Destiny and all of a sudden I'm on a mission and this entirely new gun just appears out of a chest or whatever, and I'm like, what the fuck is this? You know what I mean? Or like some other NPC rocks up during that mission that has never appeared in that mission before, doing some cool sick shit or whatever. Or like, I don't know, that stuff is so interesting to me, and I love that story of like a live service that's just literally dropping new things on you all of a sudden without warning. That is a cool. And Destiny, to be fair, Destiny has done some of that in the past. I don't want to sell it short.
There's surfboards in the you could be the Silver Surfer now. In the
Sure.
game. That's
Sure.
cool.
But like and they'll have secret missions where people discover a door and they're like, oh, what is that? You know what I mean? Like, and they figure it out and whatever else. So perhaps I'm selling Destiny a bit short with that, but I think just the idea of a actual physical thing that you can use right then and there on the battlefield, appearing out of nowhere, no warning, and it's just a new part of the game now. That is just a cool concept that I really like.
I like a lot of the things they do. They've been doing a lot of, I mean, they had their struggles at launch, of course, but just the way they've been approaching a lot of things, I just really like, especially considering I mean, they're doing a good enough job where when you said live service, I was like, oh yeah, I guess it is kind of a live service game. But it's just how everything is kind of handled. I like, and I continue to play. I don't know if I'm going to play this thing forever, because it is, when you really boil it down, a very simple third-person shooter. But it's cool. It's cool. Like the effects, the sound, the feedback, all the like weird, wacky things that can happen with your friends. Like, and you'll have all these like stories of like, remember when you did that and you dove off a cliff and then you hit a bomb and then you bounced off of me? Like, the game encourages like all those weird, with friendly fire being on, like all that stuff just encourages and sets up you having all these stories and stuff.
Yeah,
that's what I miss. I that's what I'm sad about. It's the same way that I'm forever sad that I've missed classic WoW's return. Because I played vanilla back in the day, like at launch. I was like a beta kid or whatever, and that was like the time of my life. It doesn't get any better than that, right? And then I think about classic and everyone going back and having that time, and my buddies were all there, like the people I spent my 20s with those people, you know what I mean? And they were all there doing that thing, and I couldn't do it because now this job meant that I couldn't. I just didn't have time to do that. And I'm so sad about that, and I always will regret not having that opportunity to go back, because they had their own new stories and, you know, these moments together again, having that adventure, and you can't have that again. And with Helldivers, I just feel like that's my concern. I'm like, have I missed the window where I get to have those stories? And you know what I mean? That's it's a bit of a weird sort of thing, but there's very few games I think that are nailing it so right that you are experiencing FOMO and you feel like you could never experience it that same way again later on. You know what I mean? You
got to just like, embrace your, like, just know that in your life, you can't fit everything. And
no, I know. Absolutely.
And be happy with like,
totally.
So I live near like a Pokemon Go hotbed. Like it's like a target point where people like travel to this spot to like walk around the street and play it. And I still see them to this day. And I'm always like, wow, that's awesome. I will never download that app again. I don't have time, but I am so happy for people still like loving that shit. It's cool.
Yeah,
sure. You're right. You're absolutely right.
No, Helldivers is fun. I've been playing a little bit because we used to have Overwatch was our catch-up game, and we played so much. And then you have that moment one day you just log out. You never log back in again. And so some of
so sad.
Some of the crew were playing at the Helldivers at the weekend, and generally we all had a moment where it was like, oh, this is like the old. This is like when we played Overwatch, and then we were trying to figure out next time we could play, and it was like, okay, April. See you guys then.
April, yeah. It is like
it's just part of growing up, I guess, and not having so much free time. And speaking of things, was why I don't have as much free time anymore is I played Balatro.
Balatro.
Oh boy.
Tell us.
Balatro. Balatro.
Yeah. I have no interest in poker, right? As I go to Vegas quite a bit. Usually, like, me and my friends will go after E3, RIP. When I was in Vegas a couple weeks ago for DICE, I don't really gamble. I do the thing where you sit at a blackjack table and they serve you drinks and you just tip them once. I just kind of, I don't gamble. So I don't really know how to play poker. When I was playing the original Red Dead, my brother-in-law would play poker because on the game for me, because it was a trophy or achievement that I wanted to get. I don't know how to play poker. You could argue that I still don't know really how to play poker, but I am so all in on Balatro, which is a game where you play poker and you have 3 rounds, and the final one is a boss. And you're like, oh, okay, you're just playing against poker. But there are these modifiers, these little joker cards. And then these joker cards will be like, oh, well, if you play a hand that is under 3 cards, then you will double the modifier. And every card represents like a certain amount of chips. And so there's chips with a multiplier. And you get points that way. And baby, when I tell you, some of these cards, when they come into play, I can play like 2 cards and I'll get like thousands of points and I feel like a genius. I'm this is the small bet hand, and I play 1 hand and I like get so many more points than I'm supposed to get to the next hand, and then I get to the next hand and I get another card, another modifier. And it's like, oh, okay, so if I discard spades, then I get more points this way. Or if I do this and this. And it's like such a clever way of keeping me engaged. And the boss fights, the boss fights are really cool and inventive because they will sometimes impact the modifiers you have. So if I have this hand that is somehow amazing, if all of my cards are diamonds, they could be a boss that it's like, oh, your diamond cards, or these, or cards that you've used already in this run won't have impact in this one, or they'll be like half as many points.
Okay.
It's so good, and it's like the music is just like really like just like this really great background music. Genuinely, my only complaint about this game is that the play hand and the discard hand are right next to each other. It's X and Y. And I was on a plane to LA with Tam, and I was playing it, and I had like a royal flush or something, and I showed it to him, and then I just hit Y and discarded it. And he just, I've never seen disappointment in his eyes quite like that. He just looked at me and he was like, what the hell are you doing?
So wait, he's playing it as well then?
Everyone is playing it. Like,
everyone's playing it. That's true. Everyone is playing it right now.
Everyone's playing it. We were on this press trip, and we were with Jordan Midler from VGC. I was talking to him, and we got him a code. And he messaged me today. He was basically like, I can't stop playing. And I said to him, I feel like I've given you the gateway drug, and that when you're dead, I'll feel guilt about this for the rest of my life.
More like when he has a crippling gambling addiction.
Oh yeah, because they got taken off Steam.
Because it got taken offline. Yeah, if anyone missed that story, it actually got delisted for like having gambling.
Yeah.
I forget the terminology, but the implication was that it was delisted in certain territories because it kind of like encouraged gambling, or was too gambling-esque. And it's like, it's not at all gambling-esque. It just uses playing cards. It's no more gambling than solitaire is gambling, you know?
Exactly.
This is from an indie studio?
I think it's one guy.
I think it's one guy. I've heard it's one guy. Yeah.
Is it just a card game, or are there like bad guys? Is there like a gun?
Just a card game. No bad guys, no guns.
Why are you always asking about the gun? That's always the gun. This is something we missed, by the way. In the post wrap up about Pacific Drive, this is actually what Jake said. He's like, oh man, I really wanted to ask you if they ever thought about putting a gun in it. And I'm like, why are you always asking the question about the gun? Oh man.
Yeah, no guns in Balatro that I found yet, but it's a great game, and it's a perfect Steam Deck game. Perfect Steam Deck game. So I really recommend it. I love it.
I have bought it. I am very much dying to play it. I do have some travel coming up this month, and I will be playing it on the plane extensively. It is already installed on my deck, ready to go. But yeah, it really has captured. It's taken over to the degree that Inscription took over, I think, back when it hit, where you've got that kind of, it's a deck builder, it's a roguelite kind of thing, but it does something unique with the formula that becomes addictive and surprising, and people just keep coming back to it. And it's nice because we haven't had one of those sorts of games in a while now in terms of that deck builder genre. But that genre really does have a lot of legs. Like, it just keeps surprising you with new entries every little while, you know?
It's great.
So it's nice to see this one pop off as much as it has.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, Jake. I'm just looking at your cat. She's just hanging out. She wants to know more about Balatro.
Well, that's right. That's right.
All right, so that's what we've been playing. It's time for show and tell, which is something that is not a video game. We've all seen.
There's only one thing.
We've all seen June.
All seen June.
Sorry, Dune.
Dune.
Yeah, sorry,
Dune
Dune.
2.
Yeah, I got so much shit for that.
Dune. We're going to say June, okay? And everyone who just listens are going to have to deal with it. It's June, okay?
April, May, June, July.
That's right.
June.
Where do we start?
So, first of all, did you guys love the first movie?
Yes.
Did you love it, Jake?
I thought it was, but I was like, okay, I want to see the rest of it, you know?
Sure. I liked the first movie. Don't get me wrong. I did. I mean, because Blade Runner 2049 is literally one of my favorite films ever.
Yeah.
I think it is actually better than the first film, which I actually find quite a few people agree with that. Many people vehemently disagree. Fair enough. That's cool. Personally, I think it's better. And also June, I saw it after the Zeitgeist moved on. It was really hyped up, and I was like, okay, cool. But then I went in there, I'm like, all right, I can. And I've read the books as well. And so I was like, all right, I enjoyed it, but didn't love it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a very hard story to tell in two parts. and the first half of the book is a lot of people sitting around talking about water.
Oh yeah.
Which is actually incredible, by the way, and I love that. But it's very hard to make that into a film, especially Denis Villeneuve, who's like, I'm not such a fan of dialogue. It's like, well, okay, no wonder the first film, he made obviously some choices. But when I walked out of 2, which was last night, by the way, I saw it in IMAX, I feel like I hadn't felt that way since I walked out of like Return of the King back in the day. It was like, even Endgame wasn't quite the same, as much as that was this like fist pumping heroic moment of like, fuck yeah, let's go. This really just kind of, the spectacle delivered, the art of it was so arresting.
Is tremendous.
You just walk out, you feel really filled up by that film, and also bittersweet because there's nothing else like that coming anytime soon.
Yeah,
and that's part of it as well. With like I think with the Marvel movies, we're like, cool, that was a cool Marvel movie. Look forward to seeing the next one in 4 months.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Versus this kind of film, that they don't make these kind of films anymore, and it's just you're gonna have to wait a very long time for the next one. So I felt very just overwhelmed and so like overawed, and it was just incredible. It truly was. Like it was amazing.
I think overwhelmed is the exact. So for context, I went to LA. I was taken by Funcom to go see Dune Awakening, the game. However, what the preview ended up actually being was us just watching the direct that they showed like a few days later. But they were like, you can see the film early. So I was like, well, I will go to that. Thank you very much. And so Dune Awakening as a game, cool mix of a survival game and an MMO, which is really interesting. Like they had like, I think I want to see more of it. It was kind of a bit top line from what we actually saw of it. And then we went into watching the film, and I always worry about long films. I get in my head where I'm like, what if I need to pee? What if I need to pee? And for a film that's all about how the fact that there is no water, I was like very cognizant. I was like, look, this is bone dry.
Stop talking about water.
And I just sat and I was so enthralled by every single frame. Everything was so beautiful. The sound work, the sound design, the acting. Like Rebecca Ferguson, good lord, I could not take my eyes off her every time she was on screen.
It's unbelievable.
There's obviously no spoilers in case people want to see it, but like there is a fight sequence in black and white that was.
It's actually shot with an infrared camera. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Yes, that is why it looks that way, because they shot it in infrared, and he couldn't add color back to it, so there was like a full commit on that. If it didn't work, it didn't work, and it was over. But infrared, because I watched the Colbert interview with Villeneuve, and he's like, this creates this effect where like veins and other textures are shown in a different light. In addition to this alabaster thing, it changes the way your skin looks and what you can see underneath the skin, and it was so amazing. Like, what a decision.
Stunning.
That whole sequence with the big, like, Splatoon fireworks. Did you guys see those ones? You know what I mean? Those ink fireworks, and that scene with, what's her name from Metal Gear?
Leia Seydoux.
Not even Metal Gear. It's fucking
Death Stranding.
This is my stupid video game brain. I'm like, who's the actress who's in the game from the guy who made Metal Gear Solid? Oh, her. Yeah, right. That little sequence alone was so good. It was just so brief. Not much happened during it, but you're just so like all in on it. You know what I mean? It was crazy good, unbelievably good. I just immediately want to go and see it again. I wish I had more time on my hands right now, because I would just go straight back to a cinema and just watch it again.
I'm gonna see if I can go, because sadly the showing that we had was not in IMAX, and I'm gonna go, I think, this weekend, hopefully, to see it in IMAX, because Blade Runner and 49 are like two of my favorite films as well. I have a Blade Runner tattoo, you know that. I think when it comes to sci-fi, I'm halfway through reading Dune. The thing about sci-fi that really gets me is like a sense of place and a sense of grounding. And I think that Denis Villeneuve, I believe, Villeneuve manages to do that so well. Obviously, he and his team. And I think with Dune Part 2, with the like the smaller conflicts, and then obviously like galactic scale conflicts as well. But everything felt personal. No, like, you know how Marvel movies can feel very disconnected, and I hate that that's the comparison that we're making, but also like you kind of have to, where every single conflict is end of the world. Everything is so big, so over the top, so grandiose. Whereas this one, because they spent so much time focusing on the characters themselves and their motivations, and then you just throw the Bene Gesserit into the mix and their whole fucked up deal, it just felt, when everything started coming together, I was just so, like, I could not take my eyes off it. I was just so desperate to know what was going to happen. And like every single, like, there was no duff frame in that film, and I can't believe it.
It was 3 hours. I reckon I could have gone 6.
Me too.
For real, I reckon I could have just stayed there for 6 hours and just kept going. Because
I could do a cinema thing of just put them both together. I could do it all in one.
Yeah. It didn't feel like there was any fluff or like, you didn't really need that scene or whatever. He left a lot out, obviously, because you have to. But I think the great skill of what he's done with this is that there's so much nuance within the world of like Dune in the book. The whole thing is a deeply political book with so much subtlety in language and like the political construction of the world. He can't speak to all of that in a movie, especially not the kind of movie he wants to make. But in the way that he's done this, you get the feeling that all of that exists underneath the surface of everything you see, you know? You don't doubt the political construction of the empires and the houses and the tribe, all of it, and the architecture, all of it speaks to something bigger and older, and everything has meaning. And so while he can't deal in these big elaborate dialogue sequences full of, you know, political intrigue and subtlety, there's a lot of subtlety in the visual design that communicates that world's subtlety, you know? And I think that is a really brilliant place to arrive at for how to sell a ruckus and that broader universe, you know? So
how do you feel about Timothée Chalamet's Paul Atreides? I think there were a couple of really cool parts where I was like, oh, this guy is badass. But it was uphill for me. And I do feel like towards the end, without spoiling anything, some of his like ascension, I wasn't completely sold on it because he still comes off to me like little boy yelling.
Right.
But I think even still, it's like the construction of the movie where it's like, even if I wasn't completely 1,000,000% sold on his performance, it was the music, the visuals, the swelling of it all. It helps push that feeling over the finish line for me. And I think that's like from beginning to end. Like there's just so much cool shit. Like it's I was gonna make a "they fly now" joke because it's like the first scene is like they fly now.
They fly now.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, I think Chalamet's performance, I agree. It's sort of I think the great success of his performance is that it really sells his transition from boyhood to man. Because there are moments, because I watched the first film the night before I went and saw it, and he's very clearly a boy in the beginning of that saga. And by the end, he is very clearly a man, and it's a physical transformation. It's comes across in his performance and what have you. I think he does sell it overall. I do. And I'm trying to think, well, who else would you have cast in that role? And I don't know. I mean, I'm sure someone could think of he would sell the agelessness. Absolutely. He can play the boy and the man. Absolutely.
Well, that's the thing. There's that phenomenon of actors because they get work done. There's that tweet where it's I would not be able to believe Ben Affleck in a period drama because he looks like he knows what a cell phone is. And because people have work done, and like I did see something the other day where it's like, you know, his teeth, he hasn't had veneers, so he looks appropriate. Like to the fact that he doesn't live in this world where people go to Turkey and get the turkey teeth, you know? And so there's the thing about like he sells it. I also agree that I think in Dune Part 1, I was not on board with him. I think he was kind of like on the weaker side. The cast was all fantastic, and if I had to say who was on the weaker side of things, maybe not selling it as much, I would have said Chalamet there. But I think in this one, there's one scene in particular where I was like, oh damn, I get it. Yeah, dude. He's got me. I'm believing all this, but yeah, I don't know who else it could have been. You know, I don't want to like Lord of the Rings it where it's like, well, what if Sean Connery was Gandalf and Stuart Townsend was Aragorn?
I don't know. I think other people could have. There are certain people you like. There's no way anyone else could have played certain roles, right?
Yeah.
Or you feel like it would have been a bad call not to. I think you probably could have had a different actor play this person, play Paul Atreides. It would have probably been okay as well, depending on who you cast. But I do think Timothée Chalamet did a good job overall, and like, but I think because so many other like Austin Butler, for example.
Oh, he was great.
It's kind of like he just manages to steal the show for a variety of reasons, even though
the glass
he
skin.
hasn't got that many lines. It's a visual thing. It's his presence, and it's even the way. But I think it's sort of like Batista. I think manages to do. Batista and he have a similar kind of role as these sort of offsiders who don't have a lot of lines and they work for the Baron and whatever else. Batista doesn't really do a lot with it. I don't know. He's just like really angry, and that's about it. Which is in keeping with the character in the book. Don't get me wrong. There's reasons for that, for sure. I think Austin Butler and that character that he's playing and the way that he plays it and the way that he's shot with this white thing and this bald head, it all comes together to create this incredibly, like the presence of him every second is just, man, that is a... You wouldn't want anyone I wouldn't want anyone casting that role. He just crushed it so hard, so perfectly. You feel like anyone else would be a downgrade, you know?
I like
There was one
Zendaya
moment-
a lot as Chani. I thought she did really good.
Oh.
Have you guys read the book? Have you guys read the books, by the way?
Yeah,
halfway through.
You have, okay.
So I'm like
that's
reading the first book. I had kind of read it in high school, but I like lost, and I watched the David Lynch one a lot.
Sure.
So I think it's Zendaya, but also like the making the Fremen more layered, a little bit more real, or at least presenting that there's more depth to them. I really like.
Yeah. Well, her character in the movie is very different to the character in the book.
Okay.
So quite different. And in fact, it's an improvement that I won't spoil because I'll let you guys whatever. I think it's an improvement in terms of the construction of the story, and it becomes especially important when it comes to Messiah, which is June 3. He's making June 3, and it is Messiah, and Messiah is very, very different to June, like very different. And I think what's going to make this... Say again?
I'm excited for Messiah. 'Cause everything, I'm hearing little dribs and drabs, and everything just sounds messed up.
But I think obviously Messiah is the most important part of the story in terms of like its thematic and its resolution, because it almost directly attacks what many people might think to be the central thesis or conceit of June. And it's going to make that trilogy such an interesting one because it's so rare that that a trilogy in its final arc might look to deconstruct everything that it has actually accomplished in its first two acts, you know? And so I think people are going to be really very interested to see how that lands.
We'll see it in like 4 years again. Damn.
Yeah, take their time, you know?
Yeah, seriously. Other thing I've been watching that I really want you guys to watch just because it's so good and it's like prestige TV with a huge budget that's actually incredible. Shogun. So it's on Hulu.
Heard lots of things about it.
Yeah.
I don't know what Hulu is in Australia. I have to find out where we have that.
It's like Disney Plus.
Oh,
do you have that?
okay.
Probably
Yeah,
on Disney
sure,
Plus.
that
I think
makes
that's what it's on in the UK. It's phenomenal. I've seen the first 2 episodes based on the book from, when was the book from? Like the 70s?
60 James Clavell, I think, is the author. I read the first one.
Yeah.
Oh, that's what it's based on.
Yeah.
No way. Right. Okay, cool. Yeah, I know those books. My grandma used to read them. Like I had heaps of those books sitting around in my house. Now I know that. Okay, cool. Yeah, right.
So basically there is this one lord who's in charge, and he has a son, but he dies and his son is not old enough to take over, so he kind of leaves this uneasy peace between his lord, like his other lords that are around him. I think there's 5 of them. And of course, machinations begin almost immediately. There's Catholicism, there's Christianity, there is the Portuguese, there's a secret place in like Macau. And then one day, an Englishman rocks up to Japan. And the whole...
Is it Tom Cruise?
It's not. His name is...
Damn it.
John John Blackthorne. I am so sorry. I'm getting over a cold.
John Blackthorne.
John Blackthorne.
That's the most English name I've ever heard.
And it's basically about the fact like he's getting used by these people of power to get one over on the other lords. And ultimately, like, when they come out on top, the person who will come out on top will become the Shogun, which is kind of like this ultimate title of power. And it is so good so far.
Okay.
Like, it is...
Wait, how many episodes deep is it now?
3 deep now.
Okay.
10 overall, I believe. But it's just like, I'm so fed up of TV and movies that just think the audience is stupid. And I think it's obviously awesome that they've done this, but it's like the Japanese stuff is in Japanese. It's not in English. I think they have Japanese actors speak Japanese and it's subtitled. And it is so weird to applaud something for doing that these days, but it feels like sometimes we get the dumbest watered down version where everything is in English. And like, actually, to be fair, the Portuguese and Spanish speaking, that is all in English. And so I wish they'd really fully committed. But, you know, there are these machinations going on. There are, I don't know, they're not hand-holding and like taking time to explain and show everything to an audience. And they're setting up so much intrigue and it is beautiful. It's costume design, set design, all stunning. The one thing they do that I don't really like is they have the fucking little blur bits everywhere. That's like this new thing. There was a lot in Poor Things, and I know it's a stylistic choice, but I kind of wish there's so much detail in this world that they put in and like built. I kind of wish that a lot of it wasn't blurred out, like, or like a little Gaussian blur. I don't know. That's a word I've only ever seen in Premiere.
Yeah, you actually say that. I use that word every day at work, and I don't.
Gaussian, Gaussian. It looks like it should be Gaussian.
It's a word I've only ever seen in Premiere Pro when I'm putting stuff. Anyway, it's great, and I miss this like prestige TV, Game of Thrones at the very beginning.
Just good
Westworld,
HBO stuff,
like good HBO shit before.
Westworld.
Yeah, like.
The Wire, Sopranos.
Yeah, where they
6
really
Feet
just
Under.
where they really just go all in on something. And the guy who's brought it to TV is one of the co-writers of Top Gun Maverick, which is so weird because that is not the vibe of this show.
Well, we have a Tom Cruise connection after all, so that's good.
All roads lead back to Tom Cruise.
We made it.
It's really good. And like, my to-read pile is... It's tall as me right now.
All the way up.
But I really, really want to read Shogun. So that's what I'm
my grandma was into it, so it's probably pretty
My
good.
grandpa was into it, or my best friend's grandpa. So he let me borrow the books, and I never gave him back because he was old and he forgot. So now I have his like old Shogun books.
Wow.
Yeah.
Jake, stealing from the elderly.
That's
very nice, man.
You know what? They stole from me, all right?
To finish on.
And on that note, thank you everyone for listening and watching another episode of the Friends Per Second podcast. We'll be back again in a couple of weeks, but we will be a few days late. Please forgive us.
Yes.
You'll see why. And also, if you have listened to the show, watched the show, send us a question, left us a review on Spotify or iTunes or any of your podcast listening apps of choice, we appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
You can find me on Twitter, at least James Games. Ralph.
Find me here on Shillup at youtube.org.
/Shillup. And Jake?
JAKEBALDINO. Just type that.
Nice.
Baldino was his name. I don't know why I said that. I'm so sorry.
Baldino was his name. Is a great
That's
way.
pretty good. I've actually never heard that.
Really?
That is very good.
I've heard a lot.
Well,
That's fantastic.
you're welcome. We'll see you in a couple weeks. Jake takes home.
You guys aren't going to believe this. Tie your shoes and go to bed.